the situation. I think that it would be an abuse of our power to say you have to stay where there's no policy that mandates that. So I think if Councilwoman Ingram or any other member of this body deems that they wish to utilize Zoom as the mechanism, I don't think we have a leg to stand on to tell them not to. And lastly, I think if we look at the implementation of Zoom, we have people that are going to be joining us this evening to give their perspective as far as the public hearing. We've got callers that are going to call in, and they will be upgraded to a panelist to be able to utilize that functionality. So I think at the same token, as you're saying, if we're going to go back to our pre-COVID practices, then we need to line them up and they need to come in one by one and stand up at the podium also. So I think this requires maybe some dialogue, and I think that it should be a policy conversation, because that way it is legally binding and there's no arguing.
Right. No, I agree with most of what you said, with the exception of the fact that if we did not take official action to implement Zoom for council members, then why are you saying that it takes official action to go back to pre-Zoom?
Because we can't make it up as we go. And
well, exactly.
But we didn't make up, we were under and still are under a
the basis
state of
of
emergency.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
And so that's where Zoom
I understand what you're saying.
But
totally.
we did not require anybody to use Zoom.
But Councilman,
we didn't say you have to get on the Zoom.
No.
That's the difference, I think.
No, the difference was that there was no access to City Hall when we still needed to conduct our meetings. Since then, that has changed. Citizens have been in this room, they've lined that wall behind you, and they've spoken when their time was to speak. And they had the option to either come into here and not come into here. So if there was no official action needed, which is the basis of what you're saying. Yeah, I understand that. I'm not talking about closed session. I'm not talking about closed session.
No, I'm not either.
Nor is Councilmember Ingram.
Nor am
She's
I.
talking about the attendance of tonight's meeting.
I'm not talking about
so
that
if no
either,
official action was taken, if it was, then maybe there's a date and time.
We took official action to close City
if there
Hall.
was, I understand what you're saying. But, however, what I'm saying is that's not consistent.
And we didn't have a phone line that could accommodate the meeting, and so we utilized what we saw across the city implemented. We took official action to get to the point.
So then there was a vote to go to Zoom.
There was a vote to close City Hall, and then there was conversation about how do we continue to do the city business. So this was, there was never a mandate that people had to get on Zoom. So there should not have to be a mandate that people have to come off.
It is not mandatory for her to stay or any other council member to leave.
I think we're going to just agree to disagree.
But it's also not.
I've made my point and you
right. I understand. Well, we agree to disagree.
And the city attorney has made a very clear point that we've taken no action.
And we didn't take any to go to Zoom.
We can't enforce that. You cannot arbitrarily enforce.
Well, I'm not arbitrary. It can be a majority of council about it. Okay, but what I'm saying is you're not denying access. But it is not fair for us not to do our jobs, which is to come to these meetings.
Fair is not a requirement of how this body operates.
It's not. I understand. And so neither is arbitrary.
Because there's a lot of stuff that happens that's not fair.
Right. So, any other comments, questions?
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question. In your perspective, you're saying because we don't come in person, that's not us doing our job?
No,
that's what you.
No. What I'm saying is,
please?
what I'm saying is that
707.
it is, in my opinion, it is very difficult to conduct some of the business, like choosing district maps via remote access when the maps are here. And it is very difficult to hear you or to recognize you, or you may, because of audio connectivity, have a problem hearing. So. It prevents that. So the reason why we went to remote was based on the fact that City Hall was closed and we were unable to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
That period of time has changed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Mayor, can you please send me the Zoom link, please?
I don't know that the council's finished with that, but here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do, Councilmember Ingram. If there's official action needed, I will ask count or place that item for us to work it out.
That's what
that's fine. But it's duly noted that you're here and that you're going to remote. So I got it.
Thank you. And I would like to say, I'm not against it. I'm just looking for it to be something that's concrete, because the way you have gone about doing it,
it's not me, ma'am.
It's just what you sent you sent the communication.
Right. But there were a number of people who had these conversations. It wasn't a consensus. Well, more than 6 is a consensus. 6 or more.
It wasn't that. It wasn't
that. We can just take a show of hands right
thread. I didn't see that.
So those who
it doesn't matter.
So those who support returning to in-person meetings.
Mayor Colvin, it'd
well,
be best for
it's a show of
you.
hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
My proposal
Those who
would be,
oppose?
my proposal would be, the way we enter into this process, we look at the same way. So
Well, we
what we
didn't
had,
enter into
wait a
Zoom that
minute,
way.
Mayor Colvin.
Right.
What we had our staff do was,
Right.
we had our staff present us with the best methods of moving forward.
Councilwoman Ingram, if I may, I think that that's where we are tonight. I think that where we are tonight is you're going to get the Zoom link, and that Mayor Colvin, I believe he indicated that he was going to move forward with submitting a request to have a policy presented and for the council to vote on.
Okay, well, I see everything. Thank you.
Right. Councilman Hare?
No, I was,
All right, so Councilman, we're 9 minutes behind, so I guess we'll go motion to adjourn dinner meeting and then open up the other. All right, all right. Meeting? Well, good evening, everyone. We'd like to call our Monday, November 8th, City Council meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. Those who are joining us remotely, I think Councilmember Ingram is transitioning over to remote. Item 2.0 is the invocation. Reverend Hare, Councilman Hare.
all our heads. Lord Jesus, once again, we come to you asking you to help us in moving forward with the things of the city of Fayetteville. We continue, Lord, to say thank you for all that you have done in protecting our city and protecting us as we go about our day. We continue to ask you for that. We thank you, Father, and continue to ask you to continue to take care of us as we move through the pandemic, COVID-19, and we ask you, Father, continue to heal our bodies and protect our bodies. Father, we ask you to take care of us as we move forward tonight, that our minds will be open, that we will take advantage of guarding our hearts and guarding our mouths as we move forward with things of that matter to the citizens. Lord, we thank you for so much. We thank you, Father, for cutting off the head of the enemy when he comes about to do destruction. And there's so many things we thank you for, Father. And we do all of these things and all of these requests in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Item 3.0 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Item 4.0, announcements section. Mr. Manager, do you have anything?
No, sir.
All right. Item 5.0 was the manager's report, which he reported none. Item 6.0 is the approval of the agenda. Mayor Pro Tem Jensen.
I think it was Councilmember Kinston.
Oh, Councilmember Kinston?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make an motion to add the appointment of the PWC Commissioner vote and/or conversation tonight back onto the agenda, please.
There's a motion by Councilmember Kinston, and seconded by Councilmember Ingram. Any discussion on the motion? Council, all those voting in favor, and this will need a supermajority. Those voting in favor? Those voting in favor, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, Mayor Pro Tem Jensen, Kinston, Waddell. Councilmember Ingram, what's your pleasure?
Green.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, that is 5-5, so it failed to meet the supermajority requirement. All right, item 6.0 is approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I would move to approve the agenda with,
You're not in
The
consent
remove-
yet. You're not in consent yet.
oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
All right,
Second.
all right, there's a motion to approve the printed agenda. Any discussion on the, seconded by Councilmember Dawkins, any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, show of hands. All right, Councilmember Ingram?
Red.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, that is 9-1. Those voting in opposition, Councilmember Ingram. Item 7.0 is the consent. Councilmember Hare.
Yes, sir, Mayor, I would like to pull item 7.03 for up or down votes.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Jensen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull 7.06.
All right. Council, any other items under consent? So can we get a motion to approve consent with the exception of items 7.03 and 7.06?
So be it, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion by Councilmember Wright to approve with the exception of 7.03 and 7.06, seconded by Councilmember Dawkins. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Council, those voting in favor of approving consent with those exceptions? All right, Councilmember Ingram?
Green.
All right, Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. Motion carries. Item 7.03, Councilmember Hare.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to make a motion that up or down vote on the resolution of the City Council in adopting the new electoral district boundaries.
All right,
Second.
all right. So this is a motion to approve it? You just wanted a separate vote for it?
Right, just a
Okay.
separate vote.
All right, so there's a motion to approve item 7.03, seconded by Councilmember Ingram. Any discussion on the motion?
Question is, we had, is there a district map that you're requesting council?
Well, I'm just going on what's in the docket, and the docket has the information that it has. I think it's 8-6 or in there.
A26.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
A26 or A6?
You're voting to adopt it, or what is your motion?
Isn't this just a vote for the resolution, though? Because didn't we take a vote already to adopt map A6?
I don't know if we did that
Or A.
officially.
We
Yeah, but
did.
well,
So the direction was
well, the
for
resolution
that
makes it
map.
real.
And so tonight's vote is the resolution that goes along
Right.
with the adoption of
Because
that map.
if I recall correctly, we took official action during
So you're
the
making a
work
motion?
session to approve that map. And then it was said that we were gonna take and approve the resolution during this meeting.
Right, so the
Okay.
resolution goes with the map.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, all right, excuse me, Council. Councilmember Hare.
I'm right.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wright.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a motion on the resolution of the City Council, the City of Fayetteville, to adopt the new electoral district boundaries. And this is.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought the motion was just made and seconded.
No, well, Yeah, he pulled his motion. Apologies.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
All right, so there's a replacement motion by Councilmember Wright. Is there a second to adopt?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Waddell. Any discussion on the motion? All right, council, I'll look to you for your votes to approve the resolution. All right, Madam Clerk, those voted in favor, Councilman Davis, Dawkins, Wright, Colvin, Jensen, and Waddell. Those voting opposed, Councilmember Ingram?
Green,
All right, those voting opposed, council members Banks McLaughlin, Hare, and Councilmember Kinston, what is your vote? Red?
No, I was great.
Green, okay. So those voting in opposition to Councilmember Hare and Banks McLaughlin. All right, motion carries. Item 7.06, Mayor Pro Tem Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to pull the Cool Springs Downtown District Service Agreement and move it for the trolley service. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to pull number 7.06. I was looking at the trail, or I should say the route for the trolley, and you know, when the trolley was talked about and the person that donated the trolley system, my understanding that trolley system was for tourism and for the businesses downtown, had even said to a point that the trolleys could go to Methodist, they could go to FSU to pick up the students, to bring them down to downtown. What we learned in the Millennial Council when the mayor and I about 2 years ago went to the colleges, that a lot of the kids from college had never really been downtown and didn't even know. So the donor, which was Mr. Ralph Huff, stepped up to the plate and donated these 2 trolleys. You know, I discussed it with him, and the way that I think that we need to relook at this is that these trolleys need to go in like a figure 8. It's like you come downtown, you visit, you can go up to the places, you know, go up the road, visit some other establishments, and come down to your car. The way the route is here, it is not for that. I don't know if that's what it was intended for. I know that he said he would be willing to come speak to us and tell us what his intent was, but I do not think that this was the intent, and I agree with him. So I just kind of wanted to see if we could bring this back and have him come and talk to us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments referenced? Mr. Manager, you had some insight on that?
Ms. Shoneman is here.
Oh, I'm sorry. But the manager had something. I'm coming to you, Councilmember Ingram.
I don't know if Ms. Shoneman is here, and she may have some insight, but definitely if council wants to table it for further discussion, we can.
Well,
But she may have something she.
Yeah, so glad to see you, Ms. Sharman. I'll stand by. Let me go to Councilmember Ingram and then. Councilmember Ingram.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I'm not necessarily interested in tabling this, but I will say, I thank Mr. Huff and his wife for the donation. But the Cool Springs Downtown District staff has worked hard to get this trolley system up, and I think I would like to remind that it's just fairly launched. The routes that are currently in place, I think they are suitable routes for what we have, considering that we are still under a pandemic. And there's always room to grow. So I just would like my colleagues, you all, to keep that in mind, that there's always room to grow. One of the things that I would like to highlight, since we're talking about route, is this trolley route even goes to Oak Run. And so being able to connect to the diversity of the district, especially connectivity to the downtown area, And I don't disagree that we shouldn't branch out, but I just want to remind you that it's new, and we're still under a pandemic, and there's always room to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ingram. Ms. Shoneman, you want to kind of give us a little insight on the routes and what the purpose of the contribution was by the Huff family?
Yeah, certainly. So the story is well documented across the media. We're honored to have these trolleys donated by Ralph and Linda Huff and also Coldwell Banker Advantage. To this point, the trolleys are 100% funded by private donations, and that's really important to match. In addition, we are using some of the municipal service district funds to offset the burden of corporate donations. We've spent around $100,000 thus far on the trolleys to include purchasing them, titling them, adding insurance, and then doing the branding. As you see, they used to be red and green, and now they're blue and white, and they're absolutely stunning. We did agree to a three-month beta test, so right now we are in that beta test. And when we launched the trolley system, we wanted to make sure that it went both to the Haymont area and then over to the B Street corridor. On Wednesday, I did meet with our trolley operator, a former fast transit driver, and he said, you know, Bianca, I think we need to cut the route back a little bit. We're not getting any ridership over in the Hope 6 tidal area, but we wanted to stay in the B Street area. So we're looking to slim it down just a little bit to ensure that the trolley maintains a 20 to 25 minute headway. And what that means is we don't want people on the trolley for an hour, right? We want them to be able to connect quickly from their residential node down to the central business district, but we want to also make sure that it goes to the majority of our community. Mayor Pro Tem did mention some concern about the route recently, and I have yet to talk to Mr. Huff, so I would love to do that to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I think that's very important, as well as the partners over at Coldwell Banker Advantage, because we want to make sure that we're keeping our corporate donors satiated as we are in this beta test mode. You'll notice that if you've seen the trolley signs out, we do have signs that are temporary in nature, and that is because we have moved the signs. We have moved the trolley stops over the last month or so of operation. It is a testing mode. We have not committed to a route, but we want to make sure that we're able to pick up people and bring them back to their location and to our commercial business district as quickly and safely as possible.
So just to recap what you're saying, that this is just a test, so it's fluid. It may change here and there, and you haven't had a chance to speak to the Huffs about the specifics of what their intent, because they do have their name affixed to it, right?
They do, and they did approve the route initially. The route was approved, and actually the official route map was designed by Coldwell Banker Advantage's team. So we all had a stake in developing the route initially.
Okay.
But it's certainly important to note that we are in a beta mode for the route. And we have always committed to launching this very softly. You probably haven't seen a lot of marketing and branding around it. That's quite intentional. We were looking to launch the trolley to make sure, one, they had functionality, which they do, kind of, and that they do touch down where the most amount of users can be picked up and connected to our urban core.
So a question for you before I open it to other council members. So basically what you're saying is that the trolley is working now. It's running routes.
It is.
Kind of on a soft opening.
Correct.
So if action was delayed until you spoke to the Huffs, does that impact anything? Or
It does not, actually. I mean, we are still currently parking at the Lehman Street parking lot, so I hope that that would still be a courtesy. You would provide us this secure parking lot. And we do use the existing bus stops right now as our beta test bus stops, so we would like to continue to do that.
All right, Councilman Wright.
Yes, I think it's a great project, and I feel like we need to move forward with it because it's fluent in that whatever connections or corrections or extensions that need to be made can be made during the process, during the soft start. So I don't think it's a hard stop. I think if we approve this tonight, it would not interfere with any corrections of the Huffs or any additions that they might have or suggestions. I think we need to move forward.
You're not wrong, council member. And the trolley currently operates in partnership with the municipality, but is fully funded by private donations and the municipal service district at this particular point. We didn't have to come to you initially for the route's approval. We did speak to city staff, but we did decide to move forward with the route, based on the premise that we wanted it to envelope the residential nodes that connect to the urban core.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Mr.
Bianca and Chris and Taurus, while y'all are here, what exactly does this agreement do specifically?
It's a three-part agreement that looks to allow us to park securely in the Lehman Street lot. It allows us to use existing city bus stops, and it allows for the commingling of official signage so that it doesn't look like we're using real estate temporary signs, but rather official signage.
Okay. So bring that up, it's no rush on this at all, but they are parking at our facility now, which is really one of the main issues we were looking at. So it's a very limited agreement or expansion of that, but as I think all of them have said, there's no harm in delaying this to your next meeting or even to a work session, as long as there's agreement amongst the council that they can continue to park at our facility.
So Bianca, how many nights is this running on the weekends only?
You are correct, Mayor Pro Tem.
And so where does what I was looking at, I'm sorry, my iPad I'm not functioning it well. Does it go by the multi-mobile center? Does it stop there?
At Fast Transit?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So it stops at Fast Transit, and then it goes, can you kind of give the audience of kind
Certainly,
of where
it would
goes?
travel down Franklin Street. It would ultimately connect to, I want to always call it the Otis Redding, but what's it called? The Otis Jones?
Otis Redding.
Otis, sorry. Not from here.
So when it leaves the Fast Center, so somebody can take a bus and go to the Fast Center, they get on at the multi-mobile center. What do they do? Where does it stop on Franklin Street?
It stops near the Franklin Street parking deck, which is an emerging commercial zone. If you look at our UDA, the UDA
Okay,
is.
so it stops at the parking deck.
Correct.
Makes sense to me. Okay, then where does it go?
Then it turns over onto Person Street, and there is a little bump out where a city bus station or a city bus would park in front of the courthouse and the county government complexes. We stop there.
Okay, so I guess my question is, and these are the questions that I kind of need answered, is why would it stop at the courthouse if they bought the trolleys to go from business to business and promote tourism? That is the part that I'm not understanding. And let me be clear. The reason why I'm asking these things, because our millennials are going to be so thrilled when this comes. And, in other big cities, you get on the trolley, you go from business to business, you go to the art place, you go to eat, you go back up, you go up there to the district beer place. I guess my question is we are doing it from the multi-mobile center to the parking deck to the courthouse on Friday and Saturday night. Then where does it go?
The courthouse is an important stop because Person Street has an emerging commercial zone happening. If you've seen new restaurants come online recently, you've likely seen them happen along Person Street. And so the courthouse abuts to that, right? And so we're able to provide connectivity to those restaurants.
So where do you, at the courthouse, I mean, and like I said, I think this needs to be a work session because if you go to the courthouse, I mean, I see the restaurants up this way. So after the courthouse, where do you go?
After the courthouse, we continue to travel towards Eastern Boulevard, I believe that's called, and then we turn right onto B Street. We go down to the Hope 6 project off of Old Wilmington. We do a bout face in there, which we talked about instead of turning left, turning right into the housing complex.
So then you go into the housing, and then where do you go?
And then we turn around and we repeat the route and go down Person Street. Yep, and then we come down Person Street, zip around the Market House, go up Hay Street, and we stop at various locations down Hay Street.
Okay. Are you going up the hill any?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Okay, so then after Hay Street, you go up the hill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then you come back down, and do you go?
Back to Transit Center.
Back to the Transit Center?
Yep, so we do make kind of a figure eight, as you were implying.
Okay, so if you pick me up at Hay Street, and I go up to Haymont, I have to come back down and then go all the way around to come back to Hay Street.
Yeah, and the intention is that the ride not last longer than 20 to 30 minutes based on ridership that night. We want it to be quick, we want it to be convenient, and we want to ensure that those people that are standing at the bus stops don't have a long headway or the time in between when the buses pick you up.
Okay, so, okay. And I'm still going to hold my motion, is that I'm going to make a motion that we pull this back to a work session and have the Huffs come in and discuss the trail of the.
So I guess the question is, when you create the routes, because I'm trying to follow all of this, do you get input from, or because it's kind of like transit, like we have some bus routes that don't perform well,
Sure.
or have low ridership, so you change them to make it perform well. How do you come about determining the routes that you have in this map?
We're really fortunate that we were able to hire somebody to help us manage the trolley system that was mentored by Randy Hume.
Okay.
And
So-
this transit driver is keeping ridership tallies for us and letting us know where the success is.
So my question is, the intent is theoretically to, let's say, I park here or I live, more than walking distance, but I want to come to one of these 15 stops that are sites or visit centers, so to speak. So are you going, I understand you're going to parking decks and parking lots. What other matrix are you using to determine where you go?
Well, if you look at the trolley map that Dr. Whitfield presented to Mayor Pro Tem, you'll also see on there an attractions map that is commingled alongside of that. So it's a list of all the key attractions that the municipality and the county supports, to include our parks and our museums. And our intent was to utilize the existing bus stops that were in close proximity to those attractions, as opposed to trying to create new locations.
Okay. All right.
Or
so they have
provide
a
an inconvenient traffic flow that could potentially be hazardous to pedestrians or other vehicles.
It was Councilmember Ingram and then Councilmember
Thank you.
Ingram and Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you. Is somebody speaking?
Hold on one second, Councilmember Ingram.
Okay.
Who made them? Okay, there's a motion to pull. Okay, so there's a motion by, and I'll come right back to you, Councilmember Ingram. There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Jensen to table, seconded by Councilmember Kinston. Was it? No. Was there a second? All right, motion fails for lack of a second. Councilmember Ingram.
Thank you. I will.
Okay. No, but they're discussing some other things.
Oh, it's fine.
Because we still have to
Okay.
approve it or not. I'm coming, Ms. Kinston. Councilmember Ingram, and then Ms. Kinston. Banks, McLaughlin, and Kinston.
Okay. I would like to, I'm not, Mayor Pro Tem, I don't think I understand the breakdown or the miscommunication that you may have, or more so the misunderstanding that you may have. The trolleys are hitting businesses. I've had the pleasure to ride the trolleys. I think the route serves the purpose, especially under the scope of testing. I think it serves very well. I also, my apologies. Ms. Schoeneman, please forgive me. I don't necessarily think you might have fully explained well. But in terms of going to the transit center and the courthouse, we also have to remember, because parking is, people view the parking is as what it is. A lot of people park at the county parking lot. And that's very close to our Franklin Street parking deck. So you're gonna pull a lot of the ridership from there. Not only do you pull a lot of ridership from there, you pull it from the stop on Hay Street as well. And you find yourself finding families riding all the way up the hill, not because they're going somewhere, but because they want to enjoy the trolley. So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with this agenda item.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Councilmember Ingram. Councilmember Banks, did you need to speak, or were you just seconding that?
I will second it.
Okay, so there's a second to the motion by Councilmember Ingram to move forward. Discussion, I'll go to Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, then Kinston, and then council would probably need to move forward with. And tonight, again, was for parking permission. So if I understood this correct, route adoption was not what the ask was.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Correct. I
I don't know why
Okay.
we're talking about routes.
Oh, all right. Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
I'll make it shortly. I was gonna just say that I did have the opportunity to ride the trolley the first day, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it goes around the downtown area up to Haymount, the courthouse, and it gives you the opportunity to jump off, go into a few stores, and jump back on. I think that's one of the purposes of the trolley. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kinston.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know, as you mentioned, that we're not so much talking about the routes itself, but I do have one question. The question, and this could be brought back later for discussion, the question I do have is just about the weather. When it's being, when the weather is, if it's raining or things like that. So that could be a discussion later. But I do want to, just looking at the stops, just make sure that there is places, if they're going to be standing, near the business, or how that's going to work. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Ingram, seconded by Banks McLaughlin. Any further discussion on the motion? Council, I'll look to you for your votes to approve. All right, those voting, show of hands, y'all. Those voting in favor, council members Davis, Dawkins, Banks McLaughlin, Wright, Colvin, Hare, and Waddell. Those voting opposed, Mayor Pro Tem Jensen. Councilmember Kinston, what's your pleasure?
I voted.
I didn't see. What is it?
It was for.
Green, okay. Councilmember Ingram.
Green.
All right, motion carries. This is for parking. Ms. Schoeneman, because of the concern with the route, are you bringing this back so the council can have some input in it? And we'd really like to hear from the Huffs, because this is something that fits into the district that the city controls. So the benefactor and the council and Cool Springs need to have a conversation to make sure that it's.
Yes, sir. I will certainly talk to the Huffs
Okay, all right. And bring that information back to us?
and bring that information back to you.
I would like to have the Huffs consultants. Can we have that? Because they said they would.
Either way, I mean, they've got an open invite if needed, yeah. All right, thank you. All right, council, item 8.01, Fayetteville Fire Department 2021 third quarter review. Is the manager, or is that Chief Hill?
Chief Hill,
Okay.
he's, I think he's in the hall. Chief. Chiefs.
What's up, gentlemen?
Chief Hill, I want to share something with you before you get started. Okay. I was in a classroom with 15 and 16-year-olds this week, and I was asking them about the structure of the city of Fayetteville. And I asked them if they knew who was in charge of what. They didn't know any of us. They didn't know the city manager or the city attorney, but they knew you.
All right.
So that says something. And I asked him, I said, how do you know that? I was blown away, but apparently he works with the police department, so good job on that. Keep up the good work engaging our young people.
Thank you. Making impressions where it counts.
Absolutely.
All right. I think it's hard to believe we're back again. I can just remember thinking back, 2020 would never end, and it seems like we're about to wrap 2021 here up. Take a quick look at the third quarter. No surprise, it's not going to look a whole lot different than the second quarter. There are a few metrics that stand out, good and bad, that we'll talk about as we go through. We'll jump right in. The overall headcount of the fire department hasn't changed, but we were fortunate we've been able to remain fully staffed throughout most of the quarter and most of the year. We have realized 3 vacancies in the last week or so, but we have 18 firefighters that are graduating in about 2 weeks from the academy. We come into shift, and we're currently making job offers for about a dozen more that'll start in mid-December. Before you fact check my math there, let me remind you that we use a strategy where we use salary lag to overhire positions to cover the attrition that we'll experience during the academy, so we don't have huge vacancy rates. Another strategy that we use is lateral hires. It's working out very well for us. During this quarter, we were able to attract some talent from Cary, Fuquay, Clinton, and Spring Lake to come join our department. We also reinstated 2 previous employees that realized what a great fire chief they had and got homesick and decided to come back to us. And we were fortunate to effect 1 promotion this quarter we'll talk about. I want to pause for just a second. I've been talking to you for the last year a little more about how we reimagine the fire department through some strategic planning, reorganize the department to match our organizational structure. And I want to take just a second to introduce some staff that's responsible for some of this work. I brought my deputy chiefs in. This is the 2nd tier in the fire department in our organizational hierarchy. And these are the gentlemen that oversee the 3 branches that align with our strategic goals. I'll start with Deputy Chief Kevin Dove that oversees our operations branch. He's responsible for all of our emergency service delivery, the daily operations of the line staff, vehicle maintenance, facility maintenance, and most of our procurement. So he's got a full plate. On the end have Deputy Chief Ronnie Willett. He oversees our human resources branch, which is responsible for all of our recruitment, our hiring, our training, our promotions, professional development, payroll, all things people, just as his title implies. And last but not least, have Deputy Chief Alvarez oversees our community preparedness branch. And this includes our community risk reduction activities, our fire marshal's office, fire and life safety educators, fire investigations, public information, emergency management, and the city security initiatives. I had mentioned in, the last time we met that you would start hearing less from me and a little more from them. And that'll start probably in February when we come back with our 2021 annual report. They'll be presenting on their areas of responsibility. All right, we'll jump into some boring numbers real quick. Total call volume, a little over 7,000 calls for the quarter, which is exactly what we would forecast. Look at the incident types. This is the metric I tell you that will probably never change. Nearly 70% of EMS call volume, but only 4% for fire. Total calls up to the end of the quarter, right at 20,000, is exactly what we predict on years absent of a hurricanes. Response times, just a few seconds different than what we saw in the 2nd quarter. The biggest takeaway from this slide is from the time our customers reach out and make a 911 call, that we have help on the scene in just over 7 minutes, and that's 90% of the time. Keep in mind, we don't do averages. Had a great conversation with Councilman Dawkins about a week ago. He got to witness firsthand the benefits of our expeditious response times. Was really happy for the feedback with that. And I tell you, there's no greater correlation in our joint businesses than investment that you make in a department and how we can convert that into service to the citizens. I'm not fishing for more money. I'll take it. But the point I want to make, this is a great testimony for the council and for the manager, how you've resourced us appropriately. A little more granular, looking to our low frequency, high consequence calls within our fire responses. Overall fire call totals stayed about the same, but we did see an uptick in structure fires during this quarter. Unfortunately, we did experience 2 civilian fatalities in the quarter, both in District 2 and both attributed to unattended cooking. Our dollar save ratio stayed above 90% where we want to see it. And the rest of the metrics you see in the graph, I won't go over them individually, but they're relative proportional to what we would expect with the increase in the number of structure fires that we actually had. I always like to highlight the most significant fire call we have of the quarter. This time it goes to Miss Kinston, Ivanhoe Court, King Cross Apartments in District 9. Had a rather large apartment fire. And I would say significant for a couple of reasons. Number one, this was the single largest property loss call that we experienced in the quarter. Over 50 residents were displaced. Fortunately, only 1 minor injury. But lastly, is this fire occurred right in the height of the Delta variant of the COVID pandemic. We had a couple week period there within the fire department. We had over 30 firefighters out of work, COVID related, at one time. And this event was the nexus for that near staffing crisis that we faced. I don't believe it's a coincidence that most of the people that were out were from the same shift, from the same part of town, and almost all of them were here. So we have some good mitigation strategies of things we did in the station, things we did with training, things we did with community events, but sometimes you have to go to work, and this is one of these incidents where we have to bring everybody together, so it was mindful for us.
Chief, could you tell the council what they're seeing at the equipment and the dollar value of that as well? Is it the equipment that's in that slide, the aerials?
Oh, the equipment in that slide. What I see here is I see 2 ladder trucks, which is about, well, the last one we just bought was $1.3 million apiece. There's a fire engine in this picture here. They're about $650,000 apiece. So it's an expensive business. It really is.
Do we have, is there another emergency vehicle that's coming online in the fire department, another EMS emergency response vehicle that's expected?
There's not an additional vehicle, but during the past budget, you appropriated funds for one more replacement engine and a heavy rescue truck.
When is the heavy rescue truck coming on board?
It's been ordered, but it typically takes about a year to build it, so we'll just see it around the end of the fiscal year, is what we're guessing.
Thank you, sir.
Again, which is another nearly $1 million vehicle. We looked at fires, look at the other end of the spectrum. This is our high-frequency, low-consequence calls with our EMS calls. As far as numbers, this is pretty much mirror image of what we saw last quarter. Some pretty horrific vehicle accidents. I'm sure Chief Hawkins will talk a little bit in her presentation about some of the vehicle accidents. Probably the biggest takeaway that I see in this slide is several weeks ago I met with Mike Nagowski and some county officials. We were talking about the opioid overdoses, and the county agreed to appropriate a portion of their ARPA funding to provide Narcan for all first responder agencies in the county, including us and the police department. The county's going to fund them, the hospital's going to procure and manage the distribution, and if we calculate it right, it should last us about 5 years. Busy time for our hazardous materials team. Part of the most significant calls that we experienced this quarter both happened in the county. Had a gasoline tanker on Highway 87 in Grays Creek community. It was almost a copycat incident of what we had back on Country Club Drive in April. And we had the terrible industrial accident at Valley Proteins where 2 workers had passed away. Our fire inspectors were on it again this quarter. Similar performance as what we saw in the past. This is just like when I like to remind everybody, contrary to popular belief, we don't do fire inspections to generate revenue. We do fire inspections to save lives. We do fire inspections to keep our businesses open and operating and making money. We do fire inspections to keep the occurrence of fires down, to keep our firefighters from having to crawl around in this carcinogen-laden smoke. A good testimony to their work. Over 3,000 fire code violations were found and were able to be mitigated during this quarter. Well, this is some good news. Sparky's been busy. Matter of fact, he complained the other day, he said we were working him like a dog. But if you look right in the middle of the middle bullet in the presentation there, that number's significant. Remember, we got a SAFER grant last year. In December, we hired some firefighters. They come out of the academy in June, and we was able to rearrange some personnel and invest some human capital into our fire and life safety education program. And those guys have hit the ground running. In one quarter, over 500 outreaches they were able to effect. And this doesn't include what happened in October, which is our busiest month. And this was also under COVID restrictions. They were able to get this many engagements off. Part of that, our flagship program was smoke alarm installation, but something we don't talk about a whole lot is our home safety surveys. General statute gives us access into commercial businesses and institutional and resident assembly occupancies, but we have no jurisdiction in single-family dwellings in someone's private home, and this is where 99% of the fire fatalities occur. But we do offer a home fire inspection, courtesy inspection, no charge. You can go to our website and schedule it. And remember, we're all hazardous fire department, so not only are we looking for what you would expect in a fire inspection with fire alarms, safe heating solutions, cooking areas, we're also looking for slip, trip, and fall hazards, proper lighting, loose handrails, that kind of thing. And more often than not, we reach out to the crime prevention specialists, and they also attend when we do these surveys and give some advice or some pointers out to the residents. All right, for Mr. Hare, fire station number 4, Director Stone and I.
I'm looking at it right now, sir, before you even got there.
Yeah, Director Stone and I, we met with the TRC committee and did a preliminary review. There was no issues found as we went through the plans. He and I also met with the civil engineer last week and did a little bit of tweaking to the site plan to to work around some of the utility infrastructure that was already in place. The architect is confident that we can have the bid documents finalized by the end of November. And you can see the rest of the dates for yourself. We hope to advertise for bids sometime around the first of the year and come back to you in February asking for permission to proceed.
Mayor, can I ask a question before we move on the slide? Chief?
Yes, sir.
Go back to the slide, please. Well, I guess it's not necessary to go back to the slide, but there was some discussion a period ago where we were trying to put a connection, or there was a discussion of a connection that ran
Blanton Road all the way to.
it would connect into Blanton, but it would, go down by the water, that set of apartments there, then connect into Blanton. I can't.
Blanton Road extension.
Somewhat behind the
Bellagio.
Bellagio Hotel.
Yes, sir.
Where are we on that discussion? Is it a discussion, or
Yes, sir.
it was just a thought?
Yes, sir. If the state can get their budget approved, I do believe there's money in the budget for us on that, but I'll ask Adam to verify that with our delegation. But that was one of the concerns, one of the asks that we had, is to help us identify funding to complete that road, which would be a huge benefit to the fire department and to everyone in the district.
And it would give a lot quicker access
Yes, sir.
to the community, and especially that big set of apartments that were there. But I remember we were having that discussion and just wondering where we were with that. So thank you.
Yes, sir. And this is a very exciting fire station.
It looks pretty good.
And probably, this is going to be the most impactful station that we've ever built. Because of its location, it's going to change the response dynamics for probably 4 or 5 other fire stations, to the point we don't know what it's going to do yet. So we're really excited to, see the service improvement that's going to come along with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so recognitions that come about.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Ingram.
Yeah, are we doing questions now?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Well, if you have a question, please ask. We'll try to let the chief get through his presentation. But if you could.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, and then also too, Councilmember Ingram, can you indicate to Jennifer the hand raise so that we can?
I am. It's been raised a while.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, can you keep me posted on that? All right, Chief, please.
Okay. The Chamber had their annual Valor Award ceremony. 13 firefighters and about as many police officers were recognized for their heroic efforts for the year. Have Chief Vincent Lewis, 26-year veteran of the fire department, was promoted to assistant chief during this quarter. He'll be overseeing one of our suppression shifts as well as managing our technical rescue program. We participated in a ceremony at the campus of Fayetteville Tech. It hosts our emergency services memorial. This is where firefighters and EMS workers that are killed in line of duty are honored. Sad thing is, if you look at the roll of honor there, Fayetteville Fire Department has almost half the names on there, but fortunately none recent. And last but not least on this slide, talk a little bit about the accreditation symbol in the bottom corner. Part of our process is every 5 years we have an inspection, if you will. A team comes in from out of town, opens our closet, looks in our drawers, and verifies and validates we do what we say we can do. We hosted that team back in September and received a very favorable report when they left. They all recommended us for reaccreditation. Next week I have to appear before a commission and testify and defend some of the findings, but nothing but positive vibes from the crew, and I'm not worried about the hearing at all. So I think we'll have some good news here to share with you in another week or so. And some highlights we saw for the quarter to wrap it up. We sent about 20 firefighters, police officers to Canton, North Carolina, back at the end of August. As the remnants of Tropical Storm Ida was passing through the mountains to assist with some water rescues. They represented us well. There's Sparky again. He was busy with school starting back, assisting with bus safety, crossing safety. He's excited to hear about the dog parks opening. He looks forward to seeing all y'all there over the next 2 weekends. Our Benevolent Association, they've seen a lot of firefighters with pictures wearing some pink T-shirts. They have an annual fundraiser every year. where they sell shirts that raise about $5,000 this year. Half of it's donated to the Cancer Center, and half of it's donated back to the fire department for cancer prevention initiatives. September 11th, and actually was during this quarter, so a ton of ceremonies we participated in the bottom right picture, you can see Chief Willett there leading the charge at Segra Stadium at the walk that they hosted there. Bottom middle slide's kind of exciting. I'll talk about this here just a little bit more in just a second, but it's recruiting season for us. And we're putting a lot of emphasis this year on recruiting women firefighters, female firefighters into the force. So we had a Women in the Fire Service Day a couple weekends ago. It gave potential female candidates an opportunity to come out and interact with some of the ladies on our staff, practice some of the exercises. And something really neat happened, a story that I heard, is back in the spring we talked about the Clarion Hotel fire, and there was a young lady that had just transitioned out of the military, was a resident of the fire, and she was so inspired about what she saw there, she showed up at this event, and now she wants to try her hand at being a firefighter. So we're excited to see how her journey pans out. And last but not least, if you've been to any community watch meetings over the last month, we've started our biannual customer expectations survey, which will be going on at least for one more month. And this is not a customer service survey. It's not a perception survey. This helps us in our strategic planning to interact with the community and figure out what do you want from your fire department. So if you haven't had a chance to take the survey, you can go to our website. There's a link there. Any firefighter you see on the street for the next month, they should have one in their hand to hand you. If you're quick enough, you can copy this QR code off the screen and it'll carry you straight to the survey. And last but not least, as I mentioned, it's recruiting season. We take applications every January. We're out looking active now, so we're our hardest push looking for some talent. We have 3 other candidate orientation sessions scheduled between now and the end of the year. Anybody can go to our website, fill out an interest card, and somebody will reach back and help you schedule a date for if anyone that's interested. But please help spread the word that we're hiring. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
All right, Councilmember Ingram.
Yes, thank you so much. So I wanted to have 3 points. The first point is the fire station. I thought about it when we were talking about fire station number 4, I believe. A couple of months ago, when I was asking about Fire Station 16, Councilmember Kingston raised a very good point about a fire station where the ceiling was caving in. And I wanted to follow up on that. I know it's a part of council's strategic plan to look at our, city manager, help me out, our infrastructure needs as it relates to public safety. But I did want to follow up on that fire station specific. And I know that I represent District 2, and I know that my residents east of the river want a new fire station east of the river. But if a fire station is caving in, a ceiling is caving in, that doesn't help you and our firefighters be safe. So I wanted to follow up on that.
Well, first of all, we have a lot of facility needs. We've communicated them, in the past. I'm not really familiar with a station where the ceiling was caving in, and maybe Chief Dove, I'm glad he's here, maybe he can help me. Fire station number 9, we have some problems. There were several holes in the ceiling, and some of the spackling that's on the ceiling was starting to come down, but that has been repaired. But that's the only instance that I know of that there was issues with the ceilings.
That might have been it, and so I might have interpreted where the ceiling was caving. My apologies. My second point is earlier, Councilmember Waddell mentioned about students, and I had written it down to ask earlier in the day while I was preparing for the meeting about the program that's at E.E. Smith. Do we track, or the partnership program, do we track the turnover rate of students that actually go into the public safety, fire department industry coming from that direct program?
Not directly. We do keep account of those that pursue opportunities within our organization, but I mean, I understand that there are some that pursue other fire departments that, we just don't have that information on.
Is it possible, because as we look at, and this goes into my third point, as we get ready to receive the police report, police department report, as we look at engaging our youth and opening up opportunities, new opportunities to them, is it possible that we can get data behind city, I'm not gonna say city-led, but city department entities where we are actively engaging young adults and students and working towards the workforce and knowing what those numbers are and that success rate, such as going into police field, fire department field, city government, what have you. Is there a way, but most specifically, I'm only talking about public safety tonight, is there a way that we could get those numbers?
I'm not really sure. We're intimately involved within the fire program at E.E. Smith and the EMS program, I think it's Terry Sanford, and we could get short-term data, but I don't know we have the ability to get data for, students that graduate and pursue career opportunities 3 or 4 years later, maybe post-college, and that kind of thing. I don't know that we have the ability, but we'll check. We'll ask.
Yeah, and I think what I'm really asking is the ones that go into that program and stick with Fayetteville.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really looking for. Because I do know that while we're talking about our American Rescue Plan dollars and we're looking to build up, put money towards the workforce, I think we need to have finite data behind what's working and what's not working. My third point is, I know that the Chief Hawkins has been aggressively addressing the violent crime issues and gun violence and the violence with our youth and young adults. And what I see a lot of times is, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I could be wrong. A lot of times what I see is the police department is kind of, doing this effort. And I believe in community. Police department is Phase 1, one foundation. And I wonder, is there space for the fire department and police department to join efforts on some of these things? And I recognize that some of these issues may not be the fire department's issues, but what I do see is the fire department does show up as a first responder a lot of the times to handle certain situations. So I would like some insight on that, if there's space for such joint efforts.
Well, I think we work pretty well together, and we collaborate on most of our initiatives. Really, the only thing that we're limited by is support staff for some of the functions outside of emergency service delivery.
Okay, and when you say support staff, what will it take to? And I think I was at a business not too long ago, and it said, "Please be kind to our employees. The whole world is understaffed." And is it an issue of individuals are not interested in this workforce, or is it we're not offering what individuals would need to live a balanced life or better in this workforce?
I think that's probably we need to revisit and find out exactly what it is, the question the solution we're trying to come up with. Like I said, the police department and the fire department, I feel like work very, very well together, and we'll look for other opportunities to collaborate.
Thank you, and this is my last point, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if Mr. Clip is here or if the manager can answer to that. While we're looking at our plan to be a choice employer, I know heavily we've been discussing the police department's efforts. Are we ensuring that to the same tier, we are including the fire department?
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble with the chiefs here, but competitiveness of salary and benefits is always an issue. And you don't want to wait until you have a problem to address the problem, and we're hoping that some of this, along with other city employees, will be addressed as we do our pay and comp and class study, which is ongoing. But the fire department has done an excellent job at building relationships long-term, which is, as the chief mentioned, one of the reasons they have only 3 vacancies at the moment.
Yes, sir.
But again, you don't want to wait until you have a problem to make sure that you stay competitive.
Thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Hill? All right, Chief, we appreciate it. Council, can we get a motion to receive the report?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive the third quarter fire department report from Chief Hill.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilmember Harris, second by Councilmember Ingram. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Council, look to you for the vote. All right, Councilmember Ingram.
Green.
All right, Madam Clerk, it's unanimous by those voting. Next, we'll have the third quarter of Fayetteville Police Department report. Chief Hawkins, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. As I pull up the PowerPoint, I wanted to add Chief Hill and the fire department is always at our Operation Ceasefire movie night, so definitely work in collaboration for the youth and being in the community. Every time we ask them to support us in a community event, they are always there showing up, so we definitely appreciate the fire department working together hand in hand with our community. So this is the third quarter report, and once again, I appreciate the opportunity to share always when we have it, educating not just council but the public on what all the work that the police department is doing in collaboration with the community. But before I do that, before I forget, because I know we'll go on tomorrow evening, I think I've shared, we're having, this is for council, you're invited to our awards ceremony tomorrow with the police department. It's been a minute because of COVID to be able to give those awards. So we got a lot of awards that we're passing out tomorrow regarding all the heroic events that the police employees of the police department have done. So just a reminder. So let me move forward. As you know, that third quarter, we're talking about January through September 30th of this year. We normally compare it. We give it to you in a format consistently. Crime statistics, the trends, and analysis. So this is the usual what we provide. So this is year to date compared to last year. And we have been so far consistent year to date. We'll go in depth of showing crimes against persons and crimes against property overall is down. If you recall, in the first quarter, I shared a trend that showed an 11-year trend and a 5-year trend where we have been consistently down in overall crime. I'm not forecasting ahead, but this year, based off of this number, overall, we will be down again and be competing against, in 2022, against ourselves yet again. So let's break down what we know is up in this crimes against persons category. We're going to talk about the homicides. Homicide, from January through September 30th, had 32 compared to the previous year of 23. We're down in rapes, aggravated assault, and overall aggravated assault. And what I want to do, since we want to talk about this, I'm going to bring the next category is Major Spadarico to talk about in depth of homicides. But this chart I've shared with you all the time is because it not only shows just homicides, but it shows our overdoses, it shows our suicides, it shows natural deaths. Why this is important is because the workforce investigates it all to make sure it is either a homicide or suicide, so we can't take it for granted. So when a detective goes out, we've had an increase in detectives going out this year to assess and ensure that it is a homicide and not a suspicious or suicide. So we have the same, if a suicide happens, a homicide detective has to go out to make sure it is not a true homicide and it's a suicide. So the overall death investigations is up. I'm gonna let Major Spadarico come up and talk to you about a little bit of an analysis. This is one of the things we look at, so let me let him share with you.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. The slide you see in front of you. Okay, sorry. Major Rob Spadarico. I'm the major over the investigative division of the Field Operations Bureau. So I have all the violent crime, investigative detectives, homicide, robbery, aggravated assault, as well as our undercover and our narcotic detectives all fall in that division, as well as our gang and our VCAT. So the slide you have in front of you, as Chief said, you know, our homicides are up this year. It's a big concern to us. Our detectives are working diligently to solve the cases we have open. So we took a deep dive into, you know, we're trying to look at what's happening with these homicides, not only the nuts and bolts of each crime, but we're looking for anything we can come up with in trends, anything so we can be proactive in it if possible. So we broke everything down by demographics, and these are the numbers just up to the third quarter. We looked at our suspects, and a lot of times, unfortunately, we deal with situations where we have victims of a crime one day, and then a few days later, or weeks, months, they end up being suspects. So we have a lot of folks that hold both those markers in there. But here in this case, you see that, you know, with our demographics for the suspects, we have 20 black males. These are the victims of our suspects of our homicides. 20 black males, 2 white males, and 2 black females. Now, that number doesn't match because we have several cases that we don't know who the suspects are as of now, and they're still open investigations. Then we look at our suspects, the stats on them. We have 19 of those cases we have arrests made in. Like I mentioned above, we have 8 of them where we're still open investigation, we don't have a suspect. The next category down, persons of interest / died. 2 of those are cases where we have a pretty good idea who we think did it, but that and proving it are 2 different things. So we're still working those cases, but we at least have a person identified in 2 of them. And the other one is an incident where a suspect actually was a suspect in the homicide during a home invasion who also ended up dying himself. So the suspect is deceased in that, and he counts as a victim as well as on our homicide, even though that will fall probably in a justifiable because he was attacking another. And then justified, he'll fall in that. Our victim demographics, as we move down to the bottom of the orange chart, black males, 22 black male victims, 6 white male victims, and 4 black female victims. So those numbers are something we're trying to work with and take a look at things. And then you see in the blue portion of the chart to the right, what are our motives? Why are these happening? Robbery and drug-related leads the pack because we find many cases, our robbery, our drug deals gone bad, or home invasions, as we call them, where drug dealers are being robbed by other drug dealers. Then just straight robbery below that. We've done a lot of things proactively with the robbery stuff because sometimes a lot of our robberies are could be internet-based, where internet sales, meet someone, sell a pair of shoes, meet someone, sell this, and turns into a robbery. So we try to do PSAs and things on that for people to be careful, offer safe zones for folks to go to make those transactions. Then we have our gang-related for ongoing dispute or fight, arguments that turn into a homicide, jealousy down to 3, usually, you know, that has domestic ties, and straight domestic violence 2, retaliatory homicides, we've had 2, and then 1 related to mental illness. So we're trying to look at everything when it comes to these homicides just to get smarter about it and you know, be more efficient in what we do prior to, hopefully, these events occurring. We go to the next slide. So you've seen this slide before. These are updated numbers. So we constantly brag about our relationship with our federal partners in terms of getting violent, prolific offenders off the streets. So for the third quarter, if you see in the lower right, our third quarter activity, we have 6 individuals federally sentenced. So those are individuals who are repeat offenders. They met federal qualifiers. They ended up their cases were adopted federally, and they were prosecuted federally and sentenced federally, which is good because typically they get day for day on a federal sentence, and you know, it helps keep them out of the community from reoffending.
14 individuals during that same time period were indicted and are pending adjudication, so we haven't got a sentence on them yet, but they're in the system. Our TFOs recovered $139,092 in currency, because a lot of times these cases are drug and gun related. And then the last statistic on that is 17 firearms seized and taken off the street. That's just by our TFOs in the third quarter. So we talk about our federal partnership, and we look to that because a lot of times, you know, our state partnership, our local convictions don't put these guys away for a while, but we have an interesting case that Lieutenant Chandler is going to come up and talk about, who a prolific offender from our community who has been in and out of the system his entire life, at some point spent some time federally and has now recently been convicted on some state charges. And Lieutenant Chandler, if you want to come up and talk about this individual, it's a pretty interesting in-depth case study.
Oh, it is, okay. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Brett Chandler. I'm a lieutenant with the Fayetteville Police Department. I'm over the Violent Crimes Unit. Before I get into this slide with Marcus McCormick, just kind of give you guys an idea of what the Violent Crimes Unit is. So we have the first unit we have under VCU would be our VCAT unit, which is our Violent Criminal Apprehension Team. And what the VCAT team does is they're assigned the case when the detective takes out the warrant for the violent criminal, and they're assigned to go out there and locate him and arrest him. We also take cases that aren't violent in nature if there's a particular situation where the offender, although it might be a property crime, they may be difficult to locate. It may be no location is known, or they may just be trying to run from law enforcement, so we assign those cases. To give you an idea, for 2021, our VCAT team has arrested 188 offenders, so they've been very busy. This is a five-man team. It's not very big, so it's definitely a very good work product that they've produced this year so far. And then another unit we have under VCU is our gang unit, which we call our Gang High-Risk Offender Suppression Team. This is another five-man team, and they do several things, but typically the way I describe it is there's three main missions, and that's education, intelligence, and enforcement. And what I mean by education is they participate in programs that are designed to deter youth from joining gangs, such as our EKG program. Also, we do community awareness training. We'll go to community watches. We have a PowerPoint that we do basic gang awareness, not designed to make you an expert, but it does give you an idea of what to look for in the community to spot the signs of gangs. And finally, so I also have intelligence. Our intelligence essentially is these detectives, they research things to help investigators with their crimes. So for instance, they may be investigating a homicide and it has a gang nexus. We'll do the intelligence side. We try to identify gang members, not only just for investigations, but just for general awareness for our department, so they know who they're dealing with when they're out in the street. And then finally, we have enforcement. And essentially, enforcement is just going out there and enforcing the general statutes in North Carolina, also federal law if we have subject matter jurisdiction in that particular case. To give you an idea, just real quick with the gang unit, just wanted to bring this up because they were very successful last week. We've been engaging in our violent crime initiative. The gang unit is partnered with Patrol in the western part of our city, which is we have neighborhoods broken down what we call IRAs. We identified where our highest violent crime is. We focused in that area last week. We worked nights. A very successful week. We seized 10 guns. 3 of them were stolen. Seized a lot of narcotics, almost $10,000 in U.S. currency. We arrested 9 offenders. The really good thing about it is we now have evidence to believe 2 of the guns that we seized. We seized 10. 2 of those guns we have evidence to believe were involved in recent shootings. So we know that those 9 arrests that we made were very productive. So it's just to give you an idea of what the gang unit does. And also we have the task force officers, as Major Spadarico spoke of. They're under VCU. We have 3 ATF task force officers and 2 U.S. Marshals task force officers under our unit. So getting into Mr. McCormick, one of the reasons why we wanted to highlight this is because a couple things. I know a lot of times you guys probably hear stories about federal prosecution results in a lengthy sentence. I know that's a kind of common thing, whether you're in law enforcement or not. Well, I just wanted to bring up a situation where the district attorney's office, Mr. West and his crew in Cumberland County. They did an excellent job with Mr. Marcus McCormick. So as you can see on here, this kind of gives you a timeline of the criminal activity with Mr. McCormick. It starts in 2004, and it continues all the way to the present day. If you notice, the only gaps that he actually has is when he spent time in federal prison. So in 2011, he was sentenced to federal prison. He got, I believe, 60 months. When he got out of federal prison, while he was on federal probation, our newly formed human trafficking unit, this was in 2015, they charged him with human trafficking. He was actually sent back to prison for violating his probation. And as soon as he got out again in October 2008, he resumed his criminal activity. Mr. McCormick's done a lot of things, but the main thing that he's done that's really terrorized the citizens of Fayetteville is human trafficking. And what Mr. McCormick would do is he would prey upon females that were addicted to drugs, primarily heroin. He would use that as power and control, and he would orchestrate these females to engage in prostitution. And it's a really sad and terrible story. There's a lot of females that were very brave that actually testified, and we got an amazing result. The state did a really good job. They went to trial. They proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. McCormick is guilty of his crimes, and it resulted in a minimum sentence of 23 years and a maximum of 43 years. The current projection, which very well may be longer than this, but a current projection for him to get out of state prison is October of 2045. So I mean, just a really good case, and kudos to most police officers that are with Fayetteville have dealt with Marcus McCormick at one point in time, and so just a really good success story. And if I could, I don't have a slide for it, but I just wanted to bring up two examples of recent cases with violent crime. And I'm not going to use any names because this stuff hasn't been adjudicated yet. But I think it's important for people to understand this. And what I'll be talking about in these examples is some issues with pretrial release. Now, here's the thing. So before I go into the examples, I have much respect for judicial officials. It's a very difficult job setting pretrial release. And when I say pretrial release, I'm talking about bail. It's very difficult. You have to factor in a lot of different information. You have to weigh the rights of the defendant with the ability for them to come to court, and also the dangerousness they provide to society if they're released. So it's a very difficult job. I don't pretend to have the answers for it. I wish that I had a solution. I'd be very rich if I did have a solution, but I do want to talk about two examples recently in our community that dealt with violent offenders that are on pretrial release. So the first example is he's a 32-year-old male. I'm going to take you to April 3rd, 2021. I won't even go into too much history. I'll just start with this year. So he was charged with assault on a female and communicating threats. Started off small. Those are, it's a Class A1 misdemeanor, and then communicating, both misdemeanors. On May 7th, 2021, he was arrested for second-degree forcible rape. And when he was arrested on May 7th, he immediately posted a $60,000 secure bond using a bail agent. On July 5th, 2021, he was charged with discharging a firearm in an occupied vehicle and assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious injury. He discharged a firearm into a moving vehicle. He knew who was in the vehicle. He actually struck a female that was inside that vehicle, and she was severely injured. He was arrested. We assigned this case to our violent criminal apprehension team. The incident occurred on July 5th. The detective from aggravated assault solved the case towards the end of July, was assigned to VCAT. We arrested him on 8/19/2021. He posted a $20,000 secure bond the same day he was arrested and released. On October 10th, 2021, he committed a double homicide, and we just arrested him a couple weeks ago, where he currently is in Cumberland County Jail. The second example that I wanted to give you, this is an 18-year-old male. In 2020, he was convicted for offenses that he committed in 2019. These offenses were assault with a deadly weapon on a government official. This was a police officer. He was in a stolen vehicle, and he was trying to hit law enforcement. He was also convicted of receiving a stolen vehicle, larceny of motor vehicle, credit card theft, and felony speeding to elude arrest. In 2019, this individual was tied to several violent crimes. He was engaged in a lot of retaliatory acts We couldn't prove everything. He wasn't charged with everything, but it was a known individual was causing a lot of issues in a particular area of the city. While in local confinement, Mr. Willis was charged with a felonious assault on a detention officer. On June 30th, 2020, for those offenses, he received 36 months of supervised probation. While on supervised probation, on August 19th of this year, this individual committed 2 counts of discharge of firearm into occupied property and breaking into a motor vehicle. On 8/25, he was arrested for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. This individual was placed on pretrial release. He was on electronic monitor. He actually cut his monitor on October 2nd. On October 28th, he was charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and discharge of firearm into occupied property. And we just recently arrested him on 11/1. So this year alone, he's arrested on 8/25, 8/26, 9/20, and 11/1. Now, the issue with this particular case is not the fact that they didn't issue a secure bond. He actually had a high bond. It was $300-something thousand. The issue is that he was able to get a professional bondsman to bond him out. Now, by law, a bondsman can charge up to maximum of 15%, but they can charge $1 if they want to. It's ultimately about a bondsman, what we call a surety, looking at the risks associated with bonding somebody out. I'm not here to, I don't want to criticize any particular laws or anything like that, but in North Carolina, currently as it stands, if you're out on bond and you miss court, then they can issue what's called a forfeiture order. So that bond, so when the bondsman accepts, let's say accepts 5%, and he's on the hook for $300,000, well, if that person doesn't come to court, then there's supposed to be a forfeiture, in which there is, but unfortunately the law allows, you have to have 150 days has to pass from the time they miss court to the judgment's final. So if they're arrested, basically any time within a half a year, then the bondsman's not on the hook for the money. And this forfeiture money goes to the school system. There were some changes in law in 2018 under House Bill 382 that kind of changed some of those things. So just want to give some examples. We're addressing violent crime the best that we can. It's something very important to us that we want to make this a safe and secure community, and I thank everyone for your time.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Excellent job, first of all. I felt it was very important, before I go to the next slide, that you see more than just the numbers. We share the numbers with you all the time. For example, we've gone into the aggravated assault, and so we drill down looking at misdemeanor and felony. And I'm sorry.
I want to ask a question, but I want to be properly recognized.
Well,
You got people ahead of me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I got you.
So here's our aggravated, as we look in crimes against persons. Remember, we're always looking at domestic violence to see what that correlation is, the difference of misdemeanors versus felonies. This is our electronic monitoring. This is another thing that we've paid attention, just like Lieutenant Chandler was talking about. When he says someone cuts their monitor, that doesn't, just because they get on electronic monitoring doesn't mean they're not going to commit a crime, right? They can easily cut it off, and then now we got more efforts. So just comparing last year, and these are just averages only because somebody may come off electronic monitor because they may come to court, or they may be put back on. So on average, our increase from 2020 to from 2021 has, as you can see, murders. There's a lot more people on electronic monitoring that are on murders and aggravated assault compared to last year. So now we're going to crimes against property. We've noticed our increase, of course, in robbery, so we definitely focus on that. Everything else is down comparatively, though. This is our narcotics unit. This is a slide that I share all the time compared to what the narcotics unit is focused on. We've seen an increase, of course, not just fentanyl, but cocaine seizures, marijuana seizures. They've been on an initiative of focusing on guns, especially this year. So compared to last year, how many guns they've taken off the street. Our clearance rate, we're still standing by for 2020 numbers to come from the national. So we utilize our numbers from last year. And remember, the clearance rates are fluid. So they stay this number until an arrest is made. and with the case, so it's going to increase eventually as the year goes on. This is our traffic fatalities, and this is a number that we have seen substantially increase in regards to in our community regarding to fatalities. We've seen most of it, as you see, speeding has been impactful in our community regarding fatalities that have occurred. 17 compared to 24, 23 crashes. Our communications, this is a slide you've seen before also. We've had an increase in calls for service compared to 2020. Our response time is within our targeted and is also within national average for priority 1 and priority 2 calls. Our Office of Professional Standards, we look at, of course, our use of force reviews. We also look at investigations that we look at internally, and our citizens complaint comparative. This is the complaints that come from outside the organization. Within the Office of Professional Standards, we look at our staffing. At this point in time, from September 30th, we were down, without doing the numbers, sworn, it's 57, and non-sworn 19. That has fluctuated. We've hired a little bit more since that time, non-sworn personnel, and we are on a vigorous recruiting campaign right now. Part of course, retention is making sure our staff is on point with, so we had a leadership symposium in August where we brought people from on leadership and resilience, and we had not just the ranking, we had non-sworn and sworn together talking about the subject. Our community engagement, starting in that quarter, July 23rd was that quarter's Operations Ceasefire Movie Night at Mount Olive. We had a national night out on August the 3rd. We were at 2 locations. We had August the 6th, Fayetteville Christian Operation Ceasefire Movie Night at Fayetteville Christian. And September the 9th, we had, we presented the school system where we applied for a crime commission grant in order to get intruder door defenses for Cumberland County schools. We were able to obtain $40,000 that acquired 400 intruder doors, and it was right on the heels of 2 state active shooting events in the state. So that was really a good initiative and supportive for the schools. We had, as you recall, September 13th, another community PAL boxing tournament event outdoors. We participated in a September 11th stair walk, memorial stair climb. There was a lot of officers, along with the fire department, participating in that. And I wanted to share this with you. Although this should be in the next quarter, I wanted to share with you because it'll be a little old. I set the agenda so you can get an example. You all have already approved us to start things like the violence interrupters, where we engage other methods to address violence crime. The city manager earlier in the summer, we were talking, and he recommended, why don't I have a community solution summit to address partners in the community. So with that idea, we brought, you'll see in the pamphlet, people from across other parts of the nation that have programs already up and running that work separate from the governmental entity in order to implement other changes. We had, within partners from the Cumberland County Fayetteville community, we had our healthcare provider partners. We had every university there, Cumberland County schools, faith leaders, and in fact, I want to thank Councilman Wright and Councilwoman Waddell for attending, and Councilman Wright, I know you attended for Mr. Sherrill from New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, presented a very, very powerful 3-prong. You'll see his bio, and at the end of his bio, it has the website to find all these. Do you have any feedback for what's your view of the community summit that you are able to provide?
Sure. You want some feedback right now?
You can, you
Yes,
don't have to.
Yes, ma'am. I really enjoyed the presentation and the energy that he brought to the room, more so the information and the on-ground frontline work that him and his team has done to reduce crime and to impact the communities in the way they did, working with elected officials, working with community leaders across the country. It was phenomenal, and I think that that would be great if we could bring something of that nature to the city of Fayetteville. So I appreciate that effort in bringing him in. I was very enlightened.
Thank you, sir. We had a lot of feedback from the partners from Cumberland, Fayetteville, Cumberland County. Basically, everyone's working in silos, and the opportunity to hear real, true other methods from the hospitals that are initiatives that gave a lot of energy ideas of what we may want to do here in Fayetteville. So that is pretty much the end of the presentation, and I am open for questions.
All right, thank you. Do have several, go to Councilmember Wright.
Yes, Chief. I wanted to ask you, because there's been some comments online about the opportunity for us to use gunshot detection technology.
Yes, sir.
And I know that part of the council has voted. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the gunshot technology and where you are with that technology here in Fayetteville?
Yes, sir. So there's a couple of, everyone knows something called ShotSpotter, and it's been existing for a long time, and that's not what we are looking at. We're truly looking at, and council has already approved with the Violent Crime Initiative funding for gunshot detection technology, and we are actually in the purchasing process evaluation stage for that, trying to determine whether or not we have to go out for bid or whether or not their sole source is sufficient. So that's where we are. We are looking for that gunshot technology right now.
Yeah, where are we looking, the time frame, and when do you think that we can get this technology on the ground?
Yeah, that's the other difficult part, sir. We wish we can go and just snap, but we have to follow our governmental process, which is is in purchasing process right now, and hopefully it has to go through IT technology. So we're hoping to be able to at least get something out on the streets and back maybe about January, but I can't give you a positive date of when that is. But we've already sent it out, and it's in purchasing has it right now.
Yes, City Manager, could you elaborate on that a little bit and where we are with that?
As the chief said, we're doing our due diligence on it, and
IT is with it too.
and IT and purchasing. There is, I think, something on state contract. But is that, or one city's doing testing?
One city's just received it, so they're evaluating, I think purchasing, evaluating if that'll be sufficient. But I know also IT is evaluating the technology as well.
And some of the options that we're looking for is something that is mobile.
That is correct.
So that it would not be in traditional model where it would be a fixed site. So if you're having issues in certain neighborhoods or you would like to park it, you can do that. And it can be mobile. But they are very effective, and it was something that the chief and her team recommended as part of the crime prevention strategy. But we're on it.
Okay, can you remember when we approved that as a council?
Yes, sir. When? You said when?
Yes.
Or you approved it, it's up under designation, sir, for the Violent Crime Initiative strategic initiatives. Yes, sir.
I think we budgeted before that.
Yeah.
So the designations just got approved. We've been working on it still, even though they just got approved tonight. We've already been working on the process to get it moving.
Tonight.
You said it was approved tonight?
Designations.
The funding for it was.
The funding was approved tonight?
Funding, yes. But the Violent Crime Initiative, I believe, that was maybe our September.
Right. I remember us talking about it. We voted on it back then.
Yes.
So why was it just approved tonight?
The funding, only the funding,
The
sir.
funding.
But we've been already working on it without the funding.
The funding was approved tonight?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Councilman here.
Thanks, Mayor. Chief, I've been, and I want to make sure I say this correctly and not say too much, according to an email that I received from you, but as I look at our overdoses
Yes.
from 2020, 62, and 2021, 61, so we did go down one. But what my concern is, whenever I receive the complaints back from folk in the community about folk that have OD'd, and I don't know what they could have OD'd on, you know, drugs. I hear meth quite often. And a particular location that's in my district, and I won't say that at this time. But how do we communicate support for those families? Because some of those families continue to reach out to me,
Yes.
wanting to know where we are in certain cases and what's the development. And also, how can not only those families, but how can citizens share in important, which they may consider very vital information to a particular case? How do they go about that? So those two questions for
So we
starters.
give definitely opportunities for like Crime Stoppers to provide anonymous tips. Even if they provide it through us, we have a way of just give us leads without give us information. So that's another method. We try to stay connected with our captain of the district, but even if they want to send, Crime Stoppers has benefited us a great deal by being able to receive it, and no one has to leave a name. And we follow up on every single lead, because every single lead gives us information, even if it's one or two information. I take information from second party all the time, or third party all the time. If it's a lead, we at least go assess what we can look at, or what we can. It'll be a lead, and what the officer would do is establish their own probable cause based off of studying and research. You know, Lieutenant Chandler gave you some synopsis of the work that they're doing, and you probably would not even. This is the first time I've seen him in a uniform in a long time, but because he's plain clothes, you don't see them as part of the community because they're kind of undercover doing their work. So they are definitely actively doing the work, and the more information, good leads that we see, that we hear and we receive, that we can validate and verify, that way we don't have to utilize that citizen's information. We can build our own case constitutionally on our own.
Okay, now, I want to go back to one question, because I just had a conversation about this before I came in. If a family member has overdosed, and I've had an area in my community where I've had 3 or 4 that have overdosed.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they overdose maybe on the same drug, I don't know. How do we reach out to those families and kind of keep them in the loop? Because when they're asking me, all I can do is ask you.
Yeah.
And I know we can't be maybe as open as I might want to be. But how do we do that so that I'll know how to tell them? Because even though they're past and gone and buried, families are still suffering, communities are still suffering.
Absolutely.
Communities are still asking questions.
Yeah.
And I'm their drum major to come out here to try to help get some answers for.
Yeah.
Can you kind of help us?
So
Just a little what you can?
So I believe I understand your question. It's very difficult because remember, the ME is the one who determines what they overdose on. And all those HIPAA rights, we don't get the access except for in an investigative status. If we go into, remember, homicide goes to all death investigations. And if we see clues, and we have worked, if we see clues that could connect us to the seller, we gain that information and we try to work into that aspect. But if we don't have any clues, and most of the times for an overdose, we have nothing. Unless a family member knows who the seller is, we have packaging that's around, and we will and have made attempts to say we want to prosecute who sold this drug to this individual. But if we don't have anything, because depending on where they're found, there's nothing that we can work off of, and it's very difficult because it is the family member. If they have other leads that provide us to get an investigation going. Other than that, an overdose is just considered an overdose. So whenever we can, we look for packaging or who sold, or we might look at a phone to say who was their connect in that manner. But we definitely need more evidence to be able to get started on who actually sold that drug. And it's very difficult. But most of the drugs that are right now causing the overdose are fentanyl. It's not really meth. It's more on the fentanyl, which is the extreme dangerous part, because you only need a little bit in order to, and that gauges, we don't know what it is, but we've seen an increase in different methods of fentanyl being distributed in our community.
Okay, my final question. Just like, I would assume, like a doctor would pull a family member or go to a room and speak to a family member if someone has passed while they were trying to revive them and they weren't successful. Is there anything, I want you to kind of feel where I'm headed, is there anything that our police department does in that arena along this topic that I'm speaking of?
We do death notifications, but that's about it. We don't, am I missing something major? Other than death notifications, I'm thinking you're looking for a pool of the follow-up for an overdose. Right. And that really just does not exist in our realm.
Chief Hawkins.
Oh, hold on, Councilmember Ingram. Are you finished, sir?
Mayor.
I'll be finished, Mayor. Yes.
All right, Councilmember Ingram.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I did have some questions, but this was directly related to Councilmember Hare's question. Noticeably so. I think a lot of people can ride around, the area I represent and see overdoses happening broad daylight. Councilmember Hare, what I have found as a practice, a lot of times, and I don't get into the weeds because, as Chief Hawkins said, because of HIPAA rights, I do send a letter of condolence to that individual. And if I get a receipt back that says, we want to XYZ prosecute, whatever, based off of the police department not being able to do certain things, I'll just connect them with resources such as attorneys, what have you, and grieving resources. And there's really no concrete answer to what you're looking for, but to kind of figure out what a practice is that you could implement, which is what I found. I wish it was, because it's our own community pouring this stuff back into our community, which is the sad part.
Councilmember Ingram, can we bring it to a question? Yes, ma'am. You have the floor.
It wasn't a question, Mayor Colvin, but I think he was really looking for an answer, and I was offering him what I've learned to be to that what he's experiencing and what I experienced as well. I was offering him somewhat of what I do.
All right, you have the floor.
But can I go ahead and ask my questions? Yes. Because my hand was raised for a while.
Yes, ma'am, it's your turn.
Thank you. Chief Hawkins, I want to start off with this question, and it's not, I have my own understanding of what it means and what it is. I think I want, if Captain Spadarico is still there, I would like him to come up.
Yes, Major, he's here.
Major.
He's coming.
I guess I was a captain for too long. I just can't shake that moniker anymore.
It's been a while.
It is a while.
It's been a while. Also, I want to give a highlight and thank you so much for managing the Special Olympics in the way that you do, which is a great benefit to the community.
Thank you.
Major Spadarico, in your perspective, what creates violent crime, and what to your understanding, leads a person to act upon a violent crime?
Well, that's a very in-depth question, but to not get too deep into it, a lot of the violent crimes that we investigate, we use the term are kind of lifestyle oriented, if you will. And as I mentioned when I was up here earlier, a lot of our drug-related robberies are home invasions where, realistically, we have people are selling drugs. Other people know that. They know they have cash. And the thought process might be, well, we're going to rob them of their cash and their drugs. We know they're not going to call the police. So it's, if you want to say, a victimless crime in some folks' opinion. So that happens, and a lot of times what will happen is it turns violent. There's probably a lot of those that happen that we never hear about because someone isn't hurt or killed.
I want to add a little bit. Sorry, stay with me. So one of the Mr. Sherrill, one of the presenters, really dove deep into this at his presentation, and if you think about it, it's truly a community base, from the education to the exposure health to trauma. Never being able to get over past trauma puts you in a cycle as a community where you know nothing else but what your community offers. So I think it's a lot more than just one opinion or my opinion. I think it really is a community issue to look holistically at where crime and or violence comes from and drill down into that. And that's why looking at this community solutions, really looking at from even getting into the hospital realm, knowing that they are addressing things in the hospital to prevent them from coming back to the hospital again, because they just go back into the same neighborhoods, the same violence, the same nothing else leading out, or they don't have the resources to reach out to. So I think it's a lot of things, Councilwoman Ingram, that causes violent crime that really is holistically needs to be looked at. But I didn't.
Thank you. And no, I thank you both. And Chief, I didn't directly ask you because you've been a part of this conversation. You both spoke to what I'm getting ready to speak to. Previously, we had a conversation as a body that spoke to the entities within the city and county coming together to really be partners. And I don't know what happened with that conversation, because we were dealing with the issue, and the issue, all of us, all council members realized the issue was above our heads, where we needed to go talk to the DA. We needed to talk to the court system. And we soon realized we were asking, Councilmember here was directly asking about repeat offenders. One of them was asking about repeat offenders, and how we look at so many of these offenders, and a lot of this stuff, as Major Spadarico mentioned, in layman's terms, circumstantial. And so, which is why I asked the conversation about the workforce development. And so I would like for us to be very aggressive in this conversation with really drilling in our partners when it comes to handling the crime in this city. We talk, and I don't know if the mayor has started or continue to have those meetings. I know he stated that he would, but I've not heard anything to come out of anything. And I'm not, Mr. Mayor, please be clear, I'm not like making a shot. I'm just stating that I don't know where that conversation left off. But I think we all, as partners, we all have to come to this table, and I mean the court system, statewide, we all have to come to the table. And I know there is a crime prevention effort that the governor is pushing right now, but we're at a point where we need tangible outcomes, and we have to focus in here intimately, and we have to do it together. So I would like us to pick that conversation back up with pulling in our DAs and pulling in our judges to see what exactly can happen to help with these circumstantial reasons people turn to violent crimes and crimes against people and crimes against partners. Because to keep slapping people on the wrist, there has to be a way.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I accept the Chief Mayor Colvin.
Well, Councilmember Ingram, I have to get to a question. We've got some more ground to cover.
Mayor Colvin, you interrupted me before.
Councilmember, you've had the floor. We got to have a question at the end of that.
Mr. Mayor, you interrupted me before I could even finish.
Okay, please finish, and then we need to bring this to a conclusion. I have other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Chief Hawkins, to my point, as I wrap it up, what can we do to support what I'm asking to happen?
Councilwoman Ingrid, I think that was the Community Summit solution was one of the ideas that we're looking at to say how we can bring part of replicating that for our city. We have a meeting with Mr. Sherrills again. We're working on ideas as well as during the presentation, he talked about funding opportunities that are outside of everything that we've known of. So we're going to talk about that aspect and possibly maybe going up there to look at how they've implemented it in Newark to maybe bring some ideas that are similar to what Fayetteville will need. So we are in discussion to see what we can reach out and maybe bring back to the city and the city leaders with those ideas in mind.
Okay, I will say that necessarily wasn't the answer I'm looking for, but I will follow up via email because the mayor wants me to move on. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, council member. And just to address your question, there was am having ongoing meetings with the district attorney, had one with the attorney general, have a follow-up meeting with now the Superior Court judge, district court judge chief, and the district attorney coming up in maybe by the end of the month. So I'll keep you posted on that. Councilmember Waddell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions, Chief Hawkins. I got lipstick all over my face from this mask. The first question that I have has to do with officer morale.
Yes.
I ask this, I think, every time we have this talk. I usually ask it from a different perspective. I ask, how are our officers feeling in light of our political climate? But I want to ask it a little differently today. Are we providing an opportunity for our police force to provide feedback, whether it be on the record or anonymously, as to how they feel that their working climate is? Because there have been some things that have come up that have made me rethink how happy some of our force may be in their position. Without being very specific, I think that, and I've expressed this to the city manager, I think that if we have police officers who are not happy with their work environment and are willing to, because everybody has a bad day, everybody has days where they don't like their boss or, you know, their coworker is on their nerves, but most people don't take to extreme measures in those types of situations. I believe that we've seen some extreme measures here lately that may point back to an officer or 2 or 10. I'm not sure. But I just want to know, are we giving people an opportunity to be heard to say, I hate this that's going on, or I think that this is horrible, and are we quantifying that so that this council has an opportunity at some point to look and say, we've got a real issue in this area or what have you? So that's the first question. And the second, I'll ask them both because you can keep up, I know you can. The second question is, as the report came forward about the guy, I think his name was Mr. Marcus, I'm not 100% sure, I can't. Marcus McCormick? I knew Marcus was in there somewhere. As that information was coming forward, I was hearing an indication that the issue that we're seeing, some of the issue that we're seeing with crime within our community does not necessarily relate to lack of response from the police department. What I think I understood in that portion of the presentation was that some of the issue with crime in our community has to do with a gap in our legal system. Did I understand that correctly?
It's our system.
The system in general.
Yes.
Right. And so I just want to make sure that we are really clear in presenting that information Because I think often this body is asked how we are going to address the rise in things like murder in our community. And it leaves many of us scratching our head because we don't have an answer to that. And theoretically, there is no answer to that, because what we're seeing is it's tied into a number of different things. So one of the things I think I saw was lifestyle. Is that correct?
It's relational, lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
But much of it was not just a random act of violence where somebody walked up to a stranger and said, I think I'll kill you today.
That is correct.
So my question in that regard is, how do we ensure as a body and as a police department, we are getting that information out to the public? Because we don't want a community that is afraid to go to the park, or a community that is afraid to sit on their front porch and enjoy the sunrise or the sunset for fear that somebody's going to randomly assault them.
Yeah.
So how do we get that information out? Those are my two questions.
So I'm gonna start
Thank
with
you.
that one and then go backwards.
Okay.
So in that aspect, I started off by saying, thank you. I look forward to the opportunity to always educate and share information. We are transparent. We provide the data. We provide what's going on in our community. And then we are extremely honest in the aspect of, this is a homicide that's up this year compared to any other year. But also, it is not solely in Fayetteville. This is an anomaly that's happening nationally.
Right.
And where we go to reach and try to look for strategies to address that, it's very difficult to be in someone's house where a homicide, suicide is occurring and prevent that. If we could do it, trust me, we will be doing that. But what we can do is focus our best efforts into figuring out how we can address the bigger crimes, to stop the aggravated assaults of robbery, which we have been doing. When that first slide said, we again will be low in crime yet again because they're out there working. You may not know and see them out there working, but every day, the proud moments of, good, they are rock stars out there hustling, doing their job, working the intel, working the strategies, focusing on repeat offenders, especially for the violent, taking guns off the street. When it says we have a gun initiative, focusing on how can we get these guns off the street, whether it be instead of buying drugs, we're going to try to focus on buying guns. Whatever it may be, we use our resources, the resources we have, and target where can we get the biggest bang for our bucks is a strategy that we use. Then we look across and try not to reinvent the wheel. We research across the nation. What is someone else doing? But we are, I'm telling you, we are doing, not being cocky, we are doing a very good job as a police department. They are rock stars in the aspect from the patrol officer to the investigative in the district to the violent criminal apprehension to narcotics to homicide. They are on all cylinders operating and being successful, but we need the community. We need the awareness, we need the clues, we need the people to, when they see something, prevention. When you're aware and educate, so we do that. We do the education component on our social media and our community watch groups. We are there doing everything we can to show the community we need your help in order to decrease that. And that's why we have campaigns going on for educating kids on guns. We have campaigns on strategies on Operation Ceasefire or community watch groups. We're doing as much things as possible in order to address overall crime, but specifically the violence crime. So that's what I think you all can do as far as share that message that our numbers are not hidden, the facts are the facts. We're doing, even though homicides are up like the nation, other things are not. And we're doing a whole lot more as far as sharing information. Now let's deal with the other aspect of how do we gauge. I believe, and so does the command believe, in empowerment, not just for the community, but also for our own personnel. Making sure we are advocating for what equipment do you need, you just approved the salary step increase. That's a huge win. We have initiatives for retention. We ask the officers at every level, what else can you do? What else can we do? What's going on with you? I have meetings with every level, officers, supervisors, every rank to get that feedback, but also the commanders are their feedback as well, giving them the opportunity to share with their commanders what's going on and have them be able to solve problems. we are open to any avenue for a complaint or to address the issue on every different level. We have a young police department. It's kind of a benefit because they have no idea of what things were 3 and 4 years ago. This is their new normal. And they're hard chargers. We have new supervisors. We have a slew of new supervisors. So offering things like the leadership training, focusing on what do you need to be successful in your job, are all these things that we offer, but empowering employees to say, speak up if you hear something, if you think you're not being treated right, is all we can offer in everything that we do offer. So
I guess the last part of my request, and City Manager, I suppose this would come to you since the chief does not work for the City Council, rather works for you. I would ask that you would look into some mechanism to be able to do, or that you would consider a mechanism to be able to survey the force. Because while I do hear that there's that opportunity, we survey the community to find out how they feel things are going. Let's give that opportunity, because I'm Chief Hawkins, I'm very disturbed by the possibility that there could be somebody that's working in, and it's no secret, but I won't give it airplay, but I'm disturbed by the fact that there could be a member of our elite police department who may or may not be so disgruntled that they would go to some of the links that we've seen of late. And I just want to make sure that if we have a situation like that, we are identifying it and we are dealing with it quickly. Because all it takes is one bad apple to ruin the whole bunch.
Well, yes, ma'am. And the chief and myself and the Human Resources Department are looking for exactly those opportunities. The last 18 months have been the most difficult in my career.
I can imagine.
And I can't even imagine what that would be like if you were a member of our police department.
Absolutely.
We sit here now with masks on, but that was not the issue we were dealing with last summer. And we're not too far beyond any of that. This council has made strategic and significant investments in the police department, and your continued support of them in word and deed, I think, is the greatest morale booster that is out there. The members of the police department are no shrinking violets. They have no problem in making their voices heard, but I do owe it to you, owe it to the community, and owe it to the department to make sure that I can make sure I have a pulse on that morale, whether it's good or bad or otherwise, and that's something that we'll be focusing on.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, and thank you, Chief Hawkins, and as always, thank you to the entire force for the great work that you all do.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Waddell. Do have a couple of points, and first of all, thank you, police officers and Chief, for your service to the community. I have a couple areas I kind of want to drill in. I've kind of made no secret about the recidivism or the repetitive offense, but if I'm reading this correct, electronic monitoring is up nearly 70% compared to last year. That's the pretrial release. First question is, do we participate in the monitoring of those who are released on pretrial within the city limits of Fayetteville?
So
and
these
if so,
numbers-
what is our check-in strategy?
So these numbers are just the ones that we monitor. So remember, there's other people who are on monitors, whether it be probation, parole, but these numbers are just the ones that we participate in, whether it be we go to the court and make a request that if you're going to release them, at the very minimum, can you please put them on a monitor? Because it's likely that they're going to be released to whether it be a bond. So we definitely do advocate for it, for our ECN unit, electronic monitoring unit, and then we monitor on that system. So yes, we do participate, and we advocate, especially if we get a case where we know we got to be in court the next day, to advocate that they go on.
So who handles checking in with them, calling them to see? I know when I talked to when we had the conversation with the U.S. Attorney, he talked about a program where they had certain call check-ins. They had members of the community calling just to kind of keep them, to have some accountability, that they would check in with members of the community several times a day, certain times a day. Do we do any of that on the people we monitor?
Our unit does, yes.
How many people we have assigned to that?
Chief Nolet?
Currently, we have 4. 4 personnel who are assigned to that. They cover all cuts and monitoring. They deploy all the equipment per the court order and place it on the applicants. We also run all points against all known crime reports that are done on a daily basis because we can't monitor everybody 24 hours a day. So it's an automated system that tells us if somebody on a monitor was present when another crime occurred. So it gives us a lead and we follow up with that investigatively.
So I understand the technology part, but manpower, are there calls that call in? Are there visits, surprise visits? How does that work?
So this system isn't like pretrial release as it relates to probation and parole. It's not that kind of setup. What it is we monitor the points so that they don't continue to commit crimes while they're out of jail waiting to be adjudicated on a crime that they're on. So we do not place phone calls. We do not do any of that. That's not the way the system's set up. We do not have probation parole assigned to us to be able to do that. We're basically, their part of their release is that they will wear the monitor, and if they commit a crime, we basically pull that court order, and they're basically violated, and they go into jail on the probation on the bail that was set by them. So we don't have a call-in system.
Right. So I understand what happens after. I'm trying to get to the proactive approach. So is that the norm, the way that we do it? That it's basically all technology based, and you pretty much scan for locations versus personal contact? Is that the norm? That pretrial works?
That is. That is.
All right. The other thing is that basically 67%, or nearly 2/3 of the homicides were, 25% were robbery drug related. If you add in robbery plus robbery drug related, that goes up to 30%. So nearly 1/3 of the homicides are somehow tied into that. But our narcotics arrests are down about 45%. There were 58 this time last year, 32 this year. But I see the amount of seizures are up, which means that people are using more drugs. That means they're selling more drugs, which comes with the robbery and the other stuff that comes with that. So
and that's just the robbery unit.
I didn't hear you.
That's just the robbery unit.
No, I'm talking narcotics now.
I'm sorry, that's just the narcotics unit. You're right. That is just the numbers from the narcotics unit. That's not our total seizures. I've always been highlighting just the narcotics unit.
So how do you get a full picture of the drug situation if you don't look at everything?
We look at everything. I always have just presented what the narcotics unit is doing solely, but if you want, I can present the next slide on the overall narcotics arrest seizure that you would like, for the whole entire department.
So to make sure I understand it, the narcotics unit specifically goes after certain targets, but the other numbers that you're talking about that are not included are the random, I stopped the car and found something type thing.
Well, kind of. So narcotics, for the most part, have always looked at have the ability to go more in depth in investigation, take a little bit more time into the narcotics level. Not necessarily where we have a CERT team that can hit a house in the neighborhood a lot quicker, deals more with street level really quick. The narcotics units use a little bit more intel, a little bit more technology, a little bit more resources to go into maybe the next mid-level dealer, the ones who are selling on a different level.
So this picture and this narcotics number is not right because you just left out a lot of factors.
It's just for the narcotics unit. It has always been consistent just for, we have bigger numbers for, as a police department, as a city as a whole, related to who we're arresting for narcotics, who we're targeting for narcotics, who has been arrested, what type of narcotics. If you want another slide for the next one.
No. I mean, I'm trying to understand, like the presentation tells us, it breaks down how many arrests came from homicide compared to last year.
Yeah.
How many narcotic seizures, which is a category, compared to last year. How many larcenies, burglaries, so on and so forth. So if you don't have the real number, it's hard to see what the comparison is what I'm getting at. So are our narcotic arrests up or down using all factors included?
Okay. I will be able to present on the next one for the year end, all the entire department's narcotics arrests, because there are a lot of arrests that are going on related to narcotics and related to other things, gang related, that don't happen solely with the narcotics unit.
Okay. And I didn't see what is our approach? Because about 4 of the 30 plus 31 were gang related. How proactive or aggressive are we being with dealing with that particular piece?
So Lieutenant Chandler was talking about his unit, and he talked about the 3 missions of arrest, focus, education, and they're very proactive. That was one of the stories of what the what the gang unit does, specifically his unit.
Okay. And of course we know that we are set up to where other people who have a stake in this. So basically, the conversations we've heard tonight touch a couple different spaces. It touches the judges who determine whether someone is out or not and how much the bond is, I suppose. It touches the district attorney, who's the chief law enforcement officer. And so we're trying to pull those conversations together, but we have some variables here that are kind of hard to explain. Our certain numbers are up compared to everywhere else, but we're worried about Fayetteville. So our homicides are up, but also we have our drug seizures, presumably, because you don't have all the numbers, but at least from what you're showing from the narcotic seizures are up, which mental health and the use has to be up for the demand to be there. And also, we have more people being released on a pre-basis, and we haven't talked about the monitoring. So basically, do we have the same staff level that handles our monitoring that we had in 2020?
Yes,
Even
sir.
though it's up 200%?
Yes, sir.
Is that an area that we need more manpower?
So remember, 200% is a relative number. Even though it's 200%, we're talking about monitoring 12 versus 14. Yes, we understand that the monitoring is up, but they're just going to increase their work. But as far as addressing people on monitors, that doesn't really stop the crime from happening. That's true. But we have noticed that we have to focus on that. So as far as resources right now, as we gain them, we get the support to say, we get the feedback from our ECN unit. Do we need other help? And we monitor this every week. We plead with the court to put more people on monitor. So, Chief Nolet, you can have some feedback as far as how, with the mayor's question of, do we believe that the ECN, the electronic monitoring unit, are overworked?
Well, that quite wasn't it. But what I'm saying is we see a dramatic increase, 67% for those pretrial release for murder.
Yeah.
200% for those pretrial release for aggravated assault.
Mm-hmm.
You also gave a couple examples of where suspects became victims. So there is some retaliatory something that's taking place. So my question is, you're doing twice the work with the same amount of people that you had pre these increases. So
but the
are sworn officers monitoring this
Yes.
technology?
Yes.
So then, therefore, then you have sworn officers doing twice the work. So my question was, is there an expansion of resources needed to help cover this increase?
Where the resources that are, where they're put is truly on investigating the repeat offenders that we know where they are. So if we know where these individuals are for electronic monitoring, but we don't know where the other repeat offenders that are not on electronic monitoring, how we can investigate that, how we can utilize the violent criminal apprehension team or the gang unit to say, who is doing the crime recently? That's not on electronic monitoring. That is doing other things. We're really focusing on the resources of repeat offenders because there's a lot more energy that's needed for the true repeat offender relationship that is not the electronic people who monitor electronic monitoring. So like,
Okay.
for example, the people who monitor electronic monitor also monitor our housing authority individuals. So they're in the housing authority area. Even though we're not having too much issues with our housing authority, they're doing interviews there as well. So being able to monitor those individuals is not a heavy workload because it becomes a heavy. So for example, if they cut, a person who cut goes to violent criminal apprehension to be able to seize that person.
I got you. And I appreciate that clarification. And finally, I'll just say, we've talked extensively about cameras and how cameras can, one, increase the perception of safety and actually the visibility of the police officer, kind of a force multiplier. Where are we with ramping up our camera installation? I know that we've talked about it extensively. Where are we with that, in addition to the Shot Spotter? I heard about Shot Spotter or whatever program we tend to use, but cameras have been a discussion for a while. Where are we with that?
So we are approximately, I think I sent the email in regards to, I think we have about, of our new camera systems, 10 on a pole, but we are right now in a pause because of the vendor that's installing them has to go through a process with the licensing. So that's the only pause we're at right now.
Do we only have one option for vendors?
We've already purchased all these, so at this time for those sections, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll go to Councilmember Kinston and Wright, and then we'll try to move on, guys. We're about at an hour.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Chief Hawkins, I just have one question and a comment. Going into the holiday season, people are sending packages and having packages delivered and left at their door. One of the questions that I had is, will there be any public service announcements on best practices going into the holiday? And then also, as far as our seniors being out at night, coming home, things like that, any safety things and recommendations that could be done for them?
Definitely, we typically always put the holiday preventions. I'm not familiar with the seniors being out, but can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, one of the concerns that I had from one of the residents in my neighborhood was just concerned about coming home late at night.
Okay.
And just being comfortable getting out of your car with the surroundings.
Okay.
That was a question, and the normal answer of if you think something is wrong, call 911.
Yeah.
Don't go in the house. Don't be the hero. Just call 911 if you think that something's going on. But just as they're approaching and getting out with concern with robberies and things like that.
So definitely, if they have a concern specifically, let us know or call, and we'll be happy to go in a house ahead of time for them if that's a situation. But let us know. Next week, this week, the end of this week, we actually start our holiday special, where we'll have extra patrol going on throughout the city up through New Year's. On Fridays and Saturdays, similar to our summer initiative. So we'll have extra people, extra officers working during our holiday special because of the holiday initiative.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilman Wright.
Yes, Chief, I just want to get some more input from you. The comment I have to make is basically we hear that you cannot stop the first crime. Or maybe, it's like someone wants to shoot someone. The police cannot stop that. But sometimes there are crimes of retaliation because someone in your family got shot and there's a retaliation. This is where the community comes in to assist the police department, because the police department cannot do it all. We're already short, and we need more community involvement. So there's a saying that you don't want to be a snitch. Some people are, well, I'm not going to say anything until it happens to one of your family members, then you want to say it all. So help us to understand, and I got this information, and I've always had it in my mind, but after the summit that we went through, the presentation, and I really believe that if we can get him to come do a presentation for the city council to understand the scope of what it takes for a community to help stop the violence, that's where the answer is. And so can you speak on that a little bit?
Definitely,
more?
sir. I think that's one of the reasons why one of the strategies listed is having violent interrupters or a realm for our city getting started. And we've already got a request for getting that working with purchasing. So violent interrupters, like you said, are individuals that are from the community that can hear a violence happen, and then because they've already worked in the community and become familiar, the community trusts them. Then they can go back to the community and try to quell it down, address and provide resources, deal with frustration, deal with anger management, whatever it may be, to give the reality of a retaliation is not the option. So we are actually working right now trying to figure out what will be the best format for implementing that, how people can put applications to be so we're thinking about having multiple ones to be and then training them, just like Mr. Sherrill said, there has to be training that goes along with violent interrupters for what their expectation is, and it's a paid position, basically.
Okay. So it's a paid position?
It is a paid position. As he said, you can't volunteer for, and really get results, so it's a paid position.
All right, so are you implementing that? Is already implemented?
It's working. We're working on it.
You got people on the ground already?
No, sir. No, sir. So that was one of the. So we are working of making sure how we have the realm for how the applications can take place and what the expectations are. So we're working with that, even though we're putting out the contract bid out under purchasing to say we're looking for these individuals, but we want to make sure it's clear, and we also want to make sure eventually we set up a step-off plan to where it's not under the umbrella of the police department, so that people also begin to trust these individuals in the community.
Thank you.
All right, Council, can we get a motion to receive the third quarter report? Motion by Councilmember Hare to receive the report, seconded by Councilmember Wright. Any discussion on the motion? Council, I'll look to you for your votes to receive. Councilmember Ingram?
Green.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council, 9.0 is public forum. This is a time of Fayetteville residents may have input and a voice in what goes on in their city. Due to policy restrictions, the forum will not last any longer than 30 minutes, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the City Council on issues related to the City of Fayetteville. Individuals wishing to speak at tonight's public forum should have signed up with the City Clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. If you're here to speak on items that may be on tonight's agenda under the public hearing, ask that you please reserve those comments to the public hearing. So when your name is called by the City Clerk, ask that you would then be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record. Then when you see the light located on the, or when it's indicated, you have 30 seconds remaining, and when the time elapses, your time would have expired. Again, due to policy restrictions, you're unable to extend the given time. That being said, Madam Clerk, if you could call your first speaker.
Yes, sir. We have 7 speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Mr. Chaz Sampson.
Mr. Sampson, you there?
Yes, I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Management. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My address is 719 East Ocean View Avenue in Ocean View, Virginia. I also have a residence here in North Carolina and Fayetteville as well, and staff and office. And we are presenting the military comedy tour. It will be this Friday at the Crown Theater at 7 p.m. A wonderful, amazing story of military veterans that also have served here in our community at Fort Bragg, that live in other places as well, that are coming back to give back to the city of Fayetteville. So I cordially invite each of you out to the event. I'll be placing some roll call tickets for you guys as well in the pit area. If you're familiar with the theater, it's a pretty much on-stage area that's pretty close and quaint and very exclusive, only seats 50 people. So if you're interested, I will be sending out emails to yourself, Mayor Colvin, as well as other members of the City Council, gauging your interest on whether you want to do it or not. But it's a super great event to service our military and veterans. 7 Principals Group is sponsoring it as well. There is an after party as well. That's at VFW 670 to also further promote veteran initiatives and so forth. So thank you so much for this time. I stand by for any questions that you may have in regards to this upcoming event at the Crown Theater Friday at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Great event. Thank you for honoring the military, sir.
My pleasure.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Robert Walls.
Mr. Walls, can you hear us? Mr. Walls, are you there? Is he on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Mayor, council members, city management. The standards, as you've discussed throughout this time, standards in the city are low, and they have been low for a long time. The policies that promote low standards continually restrict not only the freedom of the citizens of this city, but the ability of citizens to make an impact. And at every turn, at every request, the city management ignores requests to have an open debate on standards and policies that are ineffective. This administration owns this current state of affairs in the city. It is the policies and implementation of those policies that have kept this city from being better. It is those policies that have continually increased racial issues, discrimination, and the divide in this city. That is not the definition of can do. This city has a higher than national average poverty, violent crime, sex trafficking, STDs, drug overdoses, increased accidents, suicides, and that list doesn't stop there. The identity politics and narrative that this administration uses is not what the ground truth in this city is. This city is for some of the people, not all of the people. The last 2 years has demonstrated that it allows racial discrimination, but not the narrative that you're currently pushing. It allows liberal, woke ideology as this city's way forward. And for reference, equity. Equity is dropping and lowering the standard to the lowest common denominator so everyone else can meet that new low standard. And that is the way forward the city has presented. When you consider can do, well, this city has 4 districts that are geared toward minority representation. I've looked at your 2011 proposals. That minority representation is white and black representation, not Asian or Hispanic. So you have discriminated against Asians and Hispanics at least since 2011, and no one has addressed that. Citizens of this city deserve better. They deserve management that actually looks and takes into account the issues of the city with citizen input, not just your own input. Hypocrisy has become the end state. So my fellow Americans, if you're listening to this and you play it back, pay close attention to what the city council and the mayor says or doesn't say after. And pay attention to what they say about discriminating against Asians and Hispanics based upon their current policies. Mayor Colvin, I request a venue for an open forum with city council members and the administration so we, the residents and the people of the city, can discuss the low standards, the crime, the drugs, the increase of black on black violence, and other critical issues. An actual debate and a way forward that involves we, the citizens, the people of this city, not just you that seem to work for just some of the people.
Thank you, Ms. Walls. Madam Clerk, next speaker.
Mayor, our next speaker is Miss Kathy Greggs.
Ms. Greggs, are you there?
Hello, how are you?
Great.
How's everybody doing, Mayor and City Council members? Hello, Pam. My name is Kathy Greggs, and I live at 4607 Woodline Drive, Fayetteville, North Carolina, 28314. And it's awesome that I'm able to come after Mr. Walls, which I know dearly, retired Army as well. So I don't know if I can emphasize some things he said, but I am going to emphasize the fact that we are still waiting for funds to be obligated from the rental assistance program, which currently in a queue is 9,246 people waiting. And the money that's obligated is $9 million that still hasn't been dispersed. And this money's been sitting there once again since July, and here we are going into December month. And today we had a client go down to the urban ministry and there's 7 families sleeping right now in their car at hotels. So while everybody go home and drink their little coffee and have their little cocoa by their little fireplaces with their little Gucci bags and their little nice wigs, let's make sure we start doing our damn job, because it's your moral obligation to make sure that money is given to the people, because that is their money. So I need y'all to get on your job. That's what needs to happen. Also, I need y'all to also respond to our complaint that we made with HUD Housing all the way in Washington, D.C. about the discriminatory fact that you haven't distributed the funds to the people. So I need that to happen, because you're not transparent, just like Mr. Roberts just said, and you don't have transparency. Then the fact that you were on a call for 25 minutes arguing, which is totally unprofessional. I need y'all to go get some serious leadership development. Thank you. Pass on. Hi, Pam.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Our next speaker is Miss Teresa Hardgrove.
Ms. Hargrove, are you there?
Not available.
Okay.
Okay, our next speaker is Miss Elaine Molino.
Ms. Molina, are you there? Ms. Molina, can you star 6 to unmute your phone? Ms. Molina, are you there? Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
We're good now. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. Please state your name and address.
My name is Elaine Merlino, and I live at 2113 Burnett Avenue in Fayetteville. I'd like to start out by saying thank you for giving me this opportunity. We moved here 3 years ago into this lovely little block, quiet neighborhood. In the past 3 years, we've had shootings up and down the street. We've had numerous drug dealings. Right now, we're dealing with a house up the street, 531 Ira Avenue. It's disgusting. I mean, there are rats running in the front yard, in the garbage, pulling out dirty diapers. There's 2 children under school age that just play in the street, while mommy and daddy are selling drugs from their, front lawn. We walk our dog all the time. They do it right in front of us. They have no fear. We've called the police. We have done everything we possibly can think to do. And then there's a house on 2021 Cowan Street, right around the corner. That is like a McDonald's drive-through. It's just continuous, 24 hours a day of cars. They pull up, they drive around the back, come out with their drugs. Crack addicts all sitting out on the gutters around there. Needles, shooting up right in front of us. We've had the police have to come out just to get rid of the needles. Okay, it's to a point where I'm too scared to walk my dog by myself. My boyfriend has been accosted 3 times. We've had the police come. Well, it's never the cop that really is in our neighborhood, so he'll turn it over to somebody, and that you don't hear another word, not another word. But these homes need to get busted, they need to get raided, they need to get cleaned up. It is absolutely disgusting. Rodents and garbage, and somebody needs to come see this. I've tried to get an appointment with you, Mr. Mayor, but to no success. But we're concerned, and we don't want to move. We like it where we are. So we're just asking for some real help in this, and not just me, the whole neighborhood is asking for help.
Thank you, Ms. Molino. I meet citizens every Monday, so I'll make sure that we do have your information from signing up tonight. So I'll make sure we follow up. The manager has something to say reference to the other issues that you named.
Yes, ma'am.
I
think there's a community watch meeting tomorrow night at Massey Hill at 7.
Yes, we go all the time.
Yes, and I'm going to ask if we could also make sure that we have some of our senior staff there from my office as well as from the police department as well to try to address what sounds like is a real concern that you're having.
It truly is. Like I said, I worked in a big city. I was a bank manager for 40 years. I know gunshots when I hear it. Last week, two whole guns. It just went on for 20 minutes. Everybody heard it, and we're all like, well, if we call the cops, they don't do anything. They keep telling us their hands are tied. I don't know what they're tied with.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we lived here for 3 days and knew what was going on. Okay, So
Ms. Molina,
it's horrible.
Yes, ma'am. Point taken. I know we allocate 3 minutes. Also, if you could hold on, we need to have the chief follow up with your reference to your interaction with the officer. So someone will be.
Thank you.
Someone will be in contact with you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, our next speaker is Miss Charmaine Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, are you there?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, hello, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Charmaine Johnson. I'm located at 3375 Galleria Drive. That's Fayetteville, North Carolina, 28303. I'm wanting to make a concern about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. I have a few points that I would like to bring up. The first point being the wait times. The wait times are longer than 3 months. The timelines posted on the website are very misleading. And me personally, I have applied for the rental assistance program. I was assigned a case manager on the 14th and did not hear from anyone until November the 2nd. According to the website, it says on the timeline that after a case manager is assigned, that review should take between 1 to 5 days, eligibility 1 to 3 days, and payment 5 to 7 days. That's approximately 15 days from start to finish. It's been 20 days, and that was when I first got assigned a case manager to actually hearing from my case manager. The portal has stopped showing the status, and call wait times take almost an hour. My second point would be communication. There is little to no communication from the program to the landlords and tenants. The communication is important. It could save a lot of families from losing their homes since the landlords are in the loop. Currently, 9,246 people are waiting and over $9 million in funds that have not been distributed. We have no explanation why, and every time I'm called in, I get the same, your application is under review. My court date for summary injection, I got there 30 minutes before my hearing so that I could talk with somebody at the rental assistance table. They were going to give me an award letter to take to my landlord. Well, my hearing started at 1 o'clock. I finished around 1:20, and when I came out, they were gone. I also went up to the courthouse last week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, around 10:30 each time, and nobody has been at those tables. And as of today, I'm still waiting another update from my case manager from the last time I talked to her on the 2nd. I really believe that this program means a lot, and it can do a lot better, especially for those who have been waiting since the start of the program, and the communication could be a lot better. Yes, that's it for me.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. I sent an email to community development. We've been doing that, and also, Mr. Manager, we need to get an updated report on any money that is yet to be dispersed.
Yes, sir, we'll do that, but I want to make sure that council understands we do not have 9,000 pending applications. And we reported to you before that we have obligated to disperse the money. That was not incorrect. I've heard several speakers, and I think there may be additional ones tonight, and it's very unusual for us to address this point during the public forum. But I need the public and the landlords and the council to have confidence in this program, and we have stabilized those families that we talked about. I cannot even imagine the horror of owing money to a landlord and having to worry about eviction and knowing that there's a lifeline out there. And I know that our staff and the staff of IEM are also working to try to move that forward. But it is simply not true that we have 9,000 applications pending. We'd be happy to provide additional information for that. And I would just ask the caller to continue to be patient as we work through her processes and others. But in speaking, I want her to speak for herself, and we can help that. But there are not 9,000 applications waiting. Just think about how many households we have in the city of Fayetteville. And if you got 9,000 people waiting, no, it's just not.
All right. Well, what would be helpful is maybe an accurate report on what is pending. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Madam Clerk.
Yes, ma'am. Our final speaker is Miss Carrie Williams.
Ms. Williams, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We have you.
Okay. My name is Carrie Williams. I live at 1635 Carter Court in Fayetteville, North Carolina, 28304. I'm calling in reference to the rental assistance program, and I did hear the city manager comment stating that the number was incorrect, but as he also stated, I can only speak for myself. I applied in August, on August the 3rd to be exact, and I'll go quickly because I only have 3 minutes. I have lost my government position as a transportation officer for the United States Army. I lost it because my children caught COVID. And after a period of 5 weeks with them dealing with COVID, I had to leave my job in order to go back. So when I did leave, I fell behind my bills. I applied for all of the programs in Fayetteville, and I do say all because I have applied to private and the public sector. I was told by all of them that I made $40 a month too much. And on a rental assistance program, I was told that my case manager has not been assigned. I'll speed it up only because I came forth and spoke with council members who I thought was from Fayetteville, what they actually ended up being the House representatives and the senators for the state of North Carolina. When I reached out to them, I was able to receive assistance from the local Fayetteville Urban Ministries, which now the website states that we are to go through them. Well, I went down today for my update, and when I went there, I saw 7 families that were turned away because the Fayetteville Urban Ministry, in the course of 3 weeks, depleted all of their funds. They helped me in 3 days, and my family was not evicted. I have 5 small children, ages 11 and 3. I'm also a veteran, and I want to know what programs are also in place for people that not only are veterans, but do not meet the income restrictions. How is it possible that the pandemic affected all of us, but we have restrictions on whom's able to receive help? That is unfair, to say the least. But back to the rental assistance program, to this day, I have not received a phone call from them as to even been assigned a case manager. And not only is that unfair, but it puts a family in a state of mind of panic. And when in panic, I didn't even know who to go to in my city because Mayor Colvin, I have personally went to him, and I'll wrap it up. I went to him earlier this year to ask about the substance abuse programs in Fayetteville. You guys do not have any, and you still have yet to reach back out to me to let me know if there's any other programs for inpatient treatment for veterans or otherwise.
Okay. I don't recall us meeting, but I will follow up on you about substance abuse. Usually that's a Health Human Service County issue, but I will follow up. Thank you for that. And we have sent an email to check on your status at the rental assistance. Madam Clerk?
We have no further speakers.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll close the public forum and move on to the public hearing. Individuals desiring to speak at the public hearing must have signed up to speak with the city clerk by name and address before 7 p.m. this evening. 15 minutes be allowed for each side of the issue at the public hearing. Individual speakers be limited to 3 minutes each unless by previous arrangement, single spokesperson is designated, in which case the spokesperson may use the entire 15 minutes. When the clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, clearly state your name and address for the record, may then address the council. When you have 30 seconds, you'll be notified. And at the end of your allotted time, the timer will ring. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. How's everybody tonight?
Great.
I'll go through this quickly. You've heard this presentation before for different areas. First of all, my name is Mark Brown, and anybody who's listening at home that would have questions following the public hearing, they can please reach me at one of 2 ways: by email at mark.brown@faypwc.com, or on my mobile number 910-391-8209, and I welcome any questions people have. This is about Area 23-1, which is the Wells Place area. It's in District 6. There's my contact information. So this is Project Area 23, Section 1. So I'm going to go through what things have happened on this project so far. We're going to talk about what the schedule has been, what the cost to property owners are, and what the financing options are for the assessment. In 2018, we sent out the survey and appraisal notifications. In 2019, the council adopted the preliminary assessment resolution allowing us to proceed. And in February 2019, we mailed a copy of those resolutions to the property owners. In June of 19, we advertised for construction bids, and we completed construction in May of this year. and we submitted to the clerk the preliminary assessment roll on October 11th. And we expect that the council will take action to confirm the assessments at your next meeting. There's no action required this evening. This area is basically a platted subdivision, so these are basically all single-family residential lots. So the assessment would be $5,000 per council policy. If there happens to be in any of these areas a non-residential property, it's assessed at the same rate. $5,000 on a typical 90-foot lot is $55.56 per front foot. And so that we assess that, so it's a 90-foot minimum plus the average cost of lateral charge on non-residential properties. The interest rate based on city council policy is the prime rate on July 1 of this year plus 2%. On July 1 of this year, the prime rate was 3.25%, so the assessment rate is recommended at 5.25%. And the city economic and community development staff can discuss availability of financial assistance for some property owners. As far as paying the assessment, the customers have several options. They can prepay. We accept prepayments at any time that the assessment is known. If it's paid in full, there's no interest within 30 days from the time of notice is issued after the council acts. Financing is available by general statute in the state, at least 10 years, maximum 10 years at an interest rate of 5.25%. It can be paid in annual or monthly installments. It's about $58 a month for 10 years, but there's no penalty for prepayment. So you can pay more than the monthly or the annual amount to pay that. And that's all I have. I guess my contact information on email, mark.brown@faypwc.com, and my mobile number, 910-391-8209. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, please call your first speaker.
Yes, sir. We have two speakers, both speaking in opposition. The first speaker is Mr. Austin Bennett.
Mr. Bennett, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Austin Bennett. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Mayor Colvin and members of the City Council, thank you for hearing me tonight. I present myself. Well, first of all, my name is Austin Bennett, and we live at 2001 Crossway Drive in Wells Place. And I appear before you tonight to request a waiver of the $5,000 assessment fee for the sanitary sewer to us in Wells Place. And here's why. The city initiated involuntary annexation began in 2003, and we were annexed in the city of Fayetteville in 2005. That was 16 years ago. The city of Fayetteville failed to provide sewer services to each lot within 3.5 years of the effective date of annexation in accordance with General Statute 160A 5856. And in my opinion, we've already been assessed. Here at 2001 Crossway Drive, our annual tax bill is about $2,500. And we've been paying that tax bill for 16 years, which comes to about $40,000 that we have already paid. And I'm sure that my other Wells Place neighbors are paying about the same amount of money. So $40,000 a year times 300 property owners here in Wells Place equals about $12 million of revenue that has been generated from Wells Place. So as a result of the already generated revenue and the failure of the city to provide sewer services within 3 years, I'm requesting that the city waive the proposed $5,000 sanitary sewer fee. That completes my my presentation. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Madam Clerk, please call your next speaker.
Yes, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Matt Blashfield.
Mr. Blashfield, you there?
We don't have that.
You say you don't?
It's not on our list, sir. He's not in
Okay.
Okay. We have no further speakers, sir.
All right. With that, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Brown, what are you looking for tonight? It's just a public hearing and come back for consideration, or what?
So we'll come back, we'll give you an item to consider at your next meeting. There's no action tonight.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
This was something that I think Councilmember Banks McLaughlin brought up. You know, we've had a lot of conversation about Phase 5 and who pays what. Has there been any consideration given to suspend, waive, or to make any consideration during COVID? So COVID's had an economic impact. We've heard that along every category of life, from people being laid off work to rental assistance. What about a person having to pay tap fees on a scheduled installation? Has the commission talked about any of that?
You're talking about connection fees, tap
Yes.
fees, right? If the citizens connect within 6 months of the sewer being available, which started, I think, sometime this fall, September. I think the deadline is March. If they connect by then, there are no tap fees from PwC.
And this is a new policy because
No,
of
it's
COVID?
been like that since the beginning of Phase 5.
Right. So my question is, you're saying if they connect within 6 months of you moving into that project?
Of us notifying that the property is ready to connection. So when the project's done, we notify them, we send letters out and say it's ready for connection. If they connect within 6 months, there are no fees to PwC for connection.
Okay. Who might there be fees to?
If they want to connect, then they would have to pay a plumber to do the work, or they would have to do the work themselves if they own the property and live in the property.
Okay.
And Mayor, there is money in community development for qualified homeowners.
But you have to have a certain income.
Yes, sir.
All right. Councilmember Wright.
The last speaker mentioned about the 3.5 years. Can you expound a little bit on that policy that he quoted?
Yeah, I'm not sure about what the actual years are, but current state statute, if this annexation had happened now, the city would have, I believe, approximately 3 years to provide the sanitary sewer services. However, when Phase 5 annexation happened, the state law required that the primary collection sanitary sewer mains in the area be in place. And if they were in place, then there was no clock running on how fast it had to be done. Given that Phase 5 was a large annexation and was about 7,000 parcels, that has taken a significant period of time, obviously, to do that. But at the time that Phase 5 happened, there was no state statute based on the position that PwC's sanitary sewer system was at the time of the annexation.
And additionally, sir, Karen may have to fill in for this. I think this predates you, Mark. We actually sent a letter to all of the homeowners in the area, property owners, and said, stating the requirement, and if they wanted us to meet that requirement, then to let us know, but they would have to pay the full freight of taking the lines there in that time frame. And of the tens of thousands of letters we sent, we received no one. So by de facto, we advertised this kind of.
We had a plan.
Yeah.
And if homeowners wanted to receive the service outside of the plan, then they had the right to notify the PwC of that, and therefore would be responsible for the entire cost. Otherwise, it was part of a phased plan that has taken us a number of years. But as Mr. Brown said, the requirement at the time that the annexation took place was to have the major trunk lines in place. And in fact, because most of the west and other parts of the city were developed to urban standards, the major trunk lines were already in place. We were and are in compliance with the state statute at the time of the annexation as it pertains to the extension of water and sewer to the Phase 5 area residents.
All right. Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last work session, October 4th, I presented a request to reduce the assessment fee amount for the sewage services, and when I took a consensus, it was unanimously to residents, to not have to pay the full $5,000 assessment fee. And that was supposed to be brought back to the infrastructure committee. So staff, where are we with that? Not sure if I should be looking.
I mean, I can start, I think, Adam, you and I have been working on this, right? We heard that, Mr. Banks McLaughlin, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, and we put together a preliminary cost estimate of how much money it would cost to do that so that the city could have, dimension that where it's at in the middle of ARPA funds. The one thing that we don't know is plumber costs, because plumber costs vary from house to house, from neighborhood to neighborhood. But we put together a rough estimate based on the number of parcels, how much that would be, and gave it to the city, you know, so you could dimension to see whether that's something you wanted, the council wanted to do as part of the ARPA funds. So we've given some information for that.
Okay, will city manager, when was that supposed to be brought back to council?
Mark, well, the process was not to prioritize projects as much as priorities and outcomes. So now that the council has gone through that exercise, the staff will be working to bring back to the council by April what staff recommends to you based on the priorities that the council gave to us that night.
You said by April?
Right, remember the ARPA project cost?
Yeah, I got that.
Part of the budget process.
But I think, I'm sorry. Well, I'm hoping, Mr. Manager, that we will get a look at that before April. Because by April, you're gonna be looking for a budget adoption, or with the new council, the budget adoption shortly thereafter. Certainly, there needs to be some discussion about the strategic priorities of projects so that the council can work through that before April, considering this is November.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I thought that was the reason to bring it to the committee to discuss it before we start spending those funds.
We'll circle back with you on that. We'll come back to you with that soon.
Okay, can I get a date? And
Soon.
No,
So
before
it'll
that.
be, hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have something for you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you, council. Motion to adjourn? All right. Yeah, have a good night.